We will be, unless someone really objects somehow, we will be recording this starting now. And that's just so that we can, refer back to this, we can share it, but we can also use it for the design of subsequent training like this. So
it's not really meant to put now on the website or anything. It's just for more internal use.
So Jeroen could even eat his sandwich with the video on, and it's okay. But welcome everybody. This is the second of 2 vocabulary workshops, or let's say workshops centered on vocabulary building. And this is definitely a follow-up from the metadata for machine workshops that we ran in November last year, all on behalf of the ZonMw COVID program. And for those of you who were not here last week, the agenda document is a single agenda document for both the session last week and this week. And for all of you who are here now, you have to scroll about halfway down. What is it, page 7 or something? And then you can see the agenda for today, this part 2.
And for the new ones, we need to put the agenda document in the chat.
Yeah, so I actually took a screenshot of the agenda, but it's here in these notes. I'll put that in the chat.
Oh, I just did it.
Oh, you got it. Okay, thanks, Rita. Thank you. And by the way, the slides that I'm showing right now are at the very top in the first day agenda. It's just, I call it slide overview or something like that. So you can link to these slides, M4M overview. And very little I want to say now, just because it's like last week, we have a really packed agenda. We really want to reserve time for the hands-on stuff. So just a quick nod of acknowledgement to the people that have worked behind the scenes to bring all this to you. These are some basic logistics. Here's the agenda for today. So we have an introduction, and it's gonna cover a little bit what we did last week, but then it goes into really focusing on fair vocabularies. We'll have 2 sessions that are very hands-on, the mapping, vocabulary mappings part 1 and vocabulary mappings part 2. You get a 5-minute break in between there. And then there's also a session on definitions, right? That's almost an hour. Then another break. Then the last sort of, I would say, practical element is this quality check. So very essential part of the vocabulary building. And then we want to, really if there's time, we want to end with an introduction to a metadata template, a CDAR template that we haven't really talked about much. We've hinted at it, but we want to give you an introduction to this metadata template that is generic for data sets. And so anytime you would have a digital artifact, a digital object, and you want to call it a data set, so it could be a spreadsheet or an image or whatever, you would be able to use this template to describe it. And at least if this was done uniformly in the COVID program, you would all have really uniform, very fair, very machine actionable metadata describing all your data sets. And then we'll do a wrap up, and we'll try and take a look at the long-term perspective. The teaser here, I'll just say, what you're entering into in November and through today is not only kind of a sneak peek at what faiриfication looks like and kind of tooling that can help you to achieve higher levels of fairness, but it's also a method. And you guys are now the default, champions of the Netherlands now in how to verify this kind of information. So for those of you who are interested and have ambitions towards doing this more in the future, consider yourselves already in a kind of train the trainer program. If you would like to transfer this knowledge and help build it up for other data stewards in the community, consider the door wide open. We're looking for people who can take what they've learned over the last 2 or 3 months and begin to transform it into a more a systemic part of the way we do work in the Netherlands. So with that, I would like to say thank you and welcome. And
by the way, Margreet just joined us as well.
oh, hey, Margreet, welcome. And I would like to give the floor over to Barbara. And Barbara, I'm happy to share the agenda, but maybe you want to screen yourself.
It's not me, it's Jeroen.
Oh, yes, I see. Yeah, it's Jeroen first, Nicola, and then Barbara.
Yeah, and just that I have seen it, please, can everybody mute who does not speak? That would be very good. So, Jeroen, please start.
Okay, my share my entire screens. Notifications are off, if I'm not mistaken, so you don't see any private messages. First of all, Eric showed you the agenda. And Barbara and myself also discussed the fact that in the agenda, Eric already pointed out that we will be working in teams like last week. So on top of the agenda, you here see the teams. And though last week we had, if I'm not mistaken, 6 teams. One of the teams, we decided the standards. We might be using fairsharing.org and others like the sheet we will present later. So that we need 5 teams, and there's 4 groups of 2 persons, but depending on the amount of people in the meeting, I cannot count at the moment. We might divide the teams in groups of 3, but that's something we will do after I present the recap of last week.
Total of 23, Jeroen.
23, okay. Then once Nicola takes over, I will behind the screens take care of the teams then. So I can go to presentation modes. Oh. Where is it?
Jeroen, next to the share button, you will see present.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, it's different here. Okay. So now it's big screen for you. So all the nice logos are here. So just a short recap, and we don't want to lose time. We want to do some work. Is at the end of last week, we together selected and proved the preferred vocabulary list. We worked on the parent term. Let's call it substance, for example. Let's call it data in the name of the list. So there some things are still to decide today. In small teams, we discussed the terms, made decisions on which to delete, which to accept, rename, and have a closer look at, which means the definition. We also discussed at the planner session the highlighted critical terms. And in the end, the day after, as we called it, we assigned you some homework, and not all of you, but those who volunteered as the data champions, as a kind of wrap-up of our work from the 9th. So the homework assignment, because not everyone has been assigned the homework, this is just a sheet what we designed, is at list level, so not term level. Please, we ask them to provide the objective. Why you have done this. So the reasoning is provided. So we will give the floor to the data champions later on, so that they give a short recap of themselves. And here is the revise the assigned list and tick all boxes that apply. And the bold are the columns where they have to tick. So either accept, rename, needs a definition, and checked. So I'm not going to read it, but it's a kind of reminder for all of us that if you want to do this, these kind of steps need to be taken. So we did some, let's say, simple statistics, call them descriptive statistics on all the terms we so far gathered. And I give them a color from red that needs attention till dark green, which is almost done or completely done. And globally, if you look over here, we need to decide on 302 terms for the moment for the ZonMw project. And over 154 have been checked. So that means that 50% has been checked. The acceptance is about 1/3. So that's also a nice progress, but still some work is needed. And therefore,
say
Go
something?
ahead.
Yeah, here I see that needs definition in substance, specimen, derivative, and organism. There are lots checked as if there were no definitions, but there are already definitions. Or there was some misunderstanding, so it's not capturing.
Yeah, so the needs definition could be seen from two sides of a coin. Needs definition, there is no definition, and otherwise is if there is a term, to understand the term, definition is needed. So that's
It's always needed, yes.
So that's why those 4 dark green sheets have the need for a definition. Otherwise, people won't understand the term. So, but you're right, Barbara. For those 4 sheets, we don't need to do the definition. So maybe the team is already celebrating holidays now for this afternoon. But indeed, these are over-exaggerating. And not to confront all the data stewards to be given the floor, but we thought it would be nice that all of you shortly give your own feedback about the work you have been doing. I don't know if everyone is available, but what we could do is going from top to bottom. If the persons available today could unmute and give their short impression, let's say 2 sentences or 2 minutes, what they did, what were the main conclusions, the reasoning, any obstacles. So Jenny, are you there?
I am here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this week I had a new assignment, so I haven't been able to do as much of the homework as I would have liked to.
Yes, can I just say something? The next slides, Jan, are helping us to go through what has had to be done or should have been done. And what I did for this, because I worked very much on this where and whom stuff, I provided, I think, good suggestions that could be addressed very easily by a group before going into the mapping information or mapping exercise, if you could agree on this, because there are not so many left over. There are 7 terms for spatial scope and a few for care phase and a few for care settings. So these are the 3 open ones, and then there's geographical studies. So I think these are quite ready, but they have still to be accepted. So I worked through it. So
Thanks.
So it's a collaborative exercise. So we're not putting you on the spot, but at least this is the summary as we made yesterday, the statistics, and this morning Barbara provided this sheet. And sorry for misspelling your name, I see, because it's Jenny with an I, right?
Correct.
So,
sorry.
No. Always be careful. Peter, are you there?
Yes, I am. Yeah, so I did most of the work this morning. So target groups, I guess the goal is to identify the type of participants included in the research. I went through, I tried to group the different input that came from the groups of the previous workshops in conceptual spaces. Like target groups for policy interventions to physical risks for COVID-19 infection. In that way, I hope to put a bit more systematic behind the whole list, but it's still not sure to what extent we need all the different terms. I deleted quite a few, but I added also some to make, to have all the groups included that are possible, that are being researched at the moment. So
okay.
Yeah, it would be
Great.
nice to discuss it with some people and go through it again to see if it's now more clear.
Yeah, and also for your information, this morning or yesterday we started a discussion with Jessica about the sex and the gender issue, which has been discussed extensively.
Yeah.
So we decided to at least include them with a short list to facilitate both types of research, because those questions came around in a couple of studies. So the decision is on this slide, so you know as well, because you were working on it.
Yeah.
But that has been decided this morning.
Yeah, and I would like to add, I have looked also into that, what Jessica provided. So thank you very much on that. So I think for sex, we could have these three values, and for gender, we could use a list from a specific ontology. And these lists provide different categories. Yeah, so that's really good to have that also included. What has not been addressed is age class, and I think age class is still not addressed. Peter, is that true? I didn't see any decisions on that. But my question was, is it better to have it like 5-year steps or more addressed to the impact of COVID-19 on the different age groups?
Yeah, and I would say the last option, and that to some extent is addressed, although you could really add also the different ages, but there is a group of there's students, there's elderly, there's working people, so that's also, you could say it's also an age classification, but of course you can also then add the different categories that the government is using to divide up, for instance, the groups for vaccination or so.
Mm-hmm.
So that's indeed still something to be decided.
Okay, thanks.
No, I need to click here. Clara?
Hello, yes. Yeah, so I think what I did was, on a whole, I tried to follow the guidelines that you had given in the document to look at the lists and the terms within each list from the point of view that eventually everything will be on a ZonMw COVID-19 portal, and people would use those terms to find projects that are relevant, for example. So I think generally I agreed with most of the terms. Something I wanted to mention is the definition column that Barbara pointed out. So those were all mine that I had checked with needs definition. And that's because purely my understanding of what I read in one of the documents somewhere was that does this term need a definition in principle, or is it unambiguous so it doesn't need a definition? And I think added a note saying I think we should always add a definition, because that's going to be kind of used by a wider group. Whether we within the group find it ambiguous or not shouldn't be relevant. I mean, that's the only reason why I checked all of them with needs definition. So if it was a misunderstanding, my apologies.
No, it's not an understanding. This is excellent, right? Because this is exactly the reasoning we are looking for. So, as you could see, I left all those marks still on.
Okay.
So
yeah, but at the end we had. So just wanted to say, if perhaps I should have written if they still need a definition, just this word still, and because now we have to identify those terms that don't have any definition yet. But for example, where I don't think that we have to invest time is for the age classes, to define the age classes 5 to 10. There is no definition needed, right? It's totally clear what it is about.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Clara.
Yeah. And so just a little bit more specifically, I think two things I had, not problems, but again, I added some notes to the tabs. One was specimen, because I tried to harmonize a little bit. I saw that we had used terms that sometimes where specimen had used the term specimen within them, and sometimes they didn't. And when you looked at the definition, they were about methods. So a nasal swab is a method. So I tried to harmonize there and kind of choose terms that I think had or specimen in them, or so one or the other I think we should go for. And also I also made a comment about harmonizing also the way we actually write. I mean, it might be not needed here, but just the terms, whether we use capital, lowercase or uppercase in writing the terms, using the terms, I think it should be all harmonized. The only list name that I had problems with was, I think, derivative. I didn't think that the terms within the list were derivatives in how I read the definition of a different derivative. So I would recommend reconsidering that to something else. I think I made some suggestion, but I mean, I would just say that maybe you guys who are more experts should go back and
Yeah, but those points you raised are excellent. Those need to be discussed. Those are the, let's say, the critical discussions we need to take and decide on. Excellent.
Yeah, may I add here? So I think it's really important also to address the issue how to spell how to write the the names, the terms, because it should always follow the same scheme. That's one part, and the other part is who is going to decide at the end depends really on a very general question also to Eric and Margaret and Mike and so on. Who will be the authority at the end? Is it this group? Are the data stewards? I don't think that we are the authority from GoFair, but
Yeah, well, maybe just a quick comment, Barbara, because you and I saw this quite directly in our FAIR implementation profile workshops, but we thought it was important for many reasons to really identify clearly the community that is involved in the creation of this vocabulary and of these metadata. So this way, the world will know that it was this COVID program, and we can list people individually, the people on this call, for example, as co-authors or participants in this community who have created this resource. And it's not that everyone in the world has to use it, but it is there for others who would like to reuse it to kind of leverage our time and effort for their own purposes. But that can all be versioned and tracked in a very, in a very fair way. So it's just to say, one thing I want to explore, I think, in the next couple of weeks is how are we going to refer to ourselves? And in this exercise that we've had in November and now, how do we identify ourselves as a community? And that will be a question that will be circulating.
Yeah, and another thing, probably Barbara will also address later on, once the data stewards have had their say on their perspective, is depending on how we are going to use the terms, either import or map them, also means that you have to either reuse as it has been written, for example, or that you can write the term according to your own grammar. So that's also an, Barbara, you might take that.
I think the important thing is that everybody who contributed actively
they
in selecting terms, it can be included here as contributors. So it's a bit hard to say who is the community and who is included there, and because everything is bound to a person normally, but this is something that we have to address.
Yeah. Oh, I have to click again. Jessica?
So I tried with the data, there was a lot of terms that were listed because there's so many different types. I tried to organize the various types that were listed into sort of, like, I know we're not building ontologies, but to have sort of a general superclass over top of the different terms that we have. Like the first section was all about more individual health or biology. And then there's a whole series of types of data that more about the context, the society, the environment. And then originally it had been separated into a qualitative data section, but made it more of a, like, the experiences or like the personal contextual side of things. The hardest part is for the health related data, there are a lot of existing standards and terminology that can be referenced. It gets a lot more complicated the further out you get from that, in terms of if we're going to use standards. A lot of times there's no standard for like social data. There's no standard for economic data. Or social media data. Like there was a lot of things where there's no definition for the data itself, but for the concept. So like we could have reference the term for what social media is, but then have to still define like the data derived from social media reference to the term. So yeah, there's still some things there, as well as quite a few terms where it's not quite clear exactly what the intention was with a given term. So tried my best to sort of interpret what the meaning was. So there was a few that like I still had no idea. And yet Bruno's saying, and because she was helping me yesterday in the afternoon, going through the audiovisual tab, it's the same kind of problem, that there's definitions for what an MRI is or what process is. There's not really a lot of like, we want to have the definition of like the actual image that was created. So yeah, there's a bit of complexity there. I did find, I looked for a definition, a standard definition just for imaging data. And that was actually a pretty good one, because it talks about data generated from, and then pretty much all the different types of imaging that was mentioned. So there's probably still, there's a lot of open questions and things to discuss in that one, because it is so big and complex. So.
But excellent, excellent. And those kind of discussions we like, and especially what you also addressed about the fact that there might not be standards or vocabularies for social or economic means, as Eric stated, that with this group, we might be the authoritative organization or community who is setting up or helping arriving at a formal standard. So that's excellent. And also I like the idea you suggested about the imaging definition, because then you can delete all the other terms because it's included in the let's say the grouping definition. So that's nice.
Can I also add here something? So we decided that we will have just data, no, as a field in the template, but that we can still group them in the vocabulary as vocabulary lists if we decide that this is needed. Yeah, yep. Because everything is data. Yeah,
exactly.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Jessica.
No problem.
Petra. And I don't know whether now my screen is blocking your slides. Is this better? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, what I did is I tried to finish the 3 tabs that I had. For the laboratory services, I added some extra terms at the last workshop, so I added all the definitions that I could find. For the repositories, I had a discussion with Jeroen, and we still have to see if wait, let me put my camera on. We have to see if we want to keep it like this, or that we are going to split them in repositories, data, catalogs, and a biobank. So that is something that we need to discuss today. And for the laboratory services, for the online services that we have there, I made the distinction between systems and brand names. So we have to decide on 1 or 2 terms if it is a data capture system or something else, and then we can group them per general service, and then all the examples that we have can go under the general term.
Okay, thank you. And one of the other things that also is good to take home is that there is a site from Fair Sharing, and there are a lot of resources listed, and they can be categorized and searched upon. So that's also a good starting site to look for, and that's what Petra indicated. It might replace repositories, or we need to add it, but at least yeah, thank you. And this group was yeah, let's say exempted from homework in the sense that Bruna and Marine were asked to help the others. Do either one of you would like to state something?
Yeah, probably we should say also what happens with standards. So we decided that most of the standards will be found on fairsharing.org, and if it is needed to still add this in fair sharing, or it is not there, you can for sure find them online and then use that URL.
Yeah.
And what we also think is that it might be important to have a recommended list, a list of recommended standards that we prepare, or you could prepare, that everybody uses that, but this is not part of the vocabulary work itself.
Yeah, and you will show it in your slides, right, Barbara?
One of
sheets,
the standards that we are looking at, so one of the type of the standards are semantic artifacts, and we will need them today anyhow to look up and to see for which definitions to use or to map to. Yeah, can I say something also to this general issue, how the preferred label should be spelled? Is it the English word?
Yeah. It's exactly. Yeah.
So there is a general rule that normally you should use singular, for the terms. For species, sometimes, also I saw that species are in plural. That's the only exception. But normally you use a singular term and everything small letters. Only if there is an acronym used, then you use capital letters. That's how you do it. But it is a bit different if you include this preferred label in the namespace, in the identifier. Then I think I give over to Nicola, but this is a bit different. I think you use camel case for that. But this is a general view. So the label itself is really small letters and singular.
I mean, it will really, that's a regular practice, and it will, some changes are based on the domain. And yeah, for atmospheric science, we like camel cases, and maybe these parent terms are typically written in the first capital letter, just so kind of highlights that this is grouping, or somehow to distinguish from the URL that you get for the term, basically. So, but
well,
yeah.
I cannot support that. Normally, it's just a concept as any other, but yeah, it's not very often used. So that's what I've learned. Sorry.
Let's keep it as a home message. The base rule is the one Barbara explained, singular.
Singular, yeah.
Okay, Barbara or Eric, I guess Nicola is now the next.
Nicola is next, yes.
Yeah. So let me show
and by the way, there are a lot of discussions I didn't notice in the chat. Should we pay attention to it, or rephrase what has been stated there while Nicola is preparing? Or do we do it later? We can do it later. Nicola, go ahead.
Sure, thanks. So I have only 15 minutes and I have a lot of slides. And
you can take 20 or so 25.
Yeah, sure. But just to let you know, much of the slides are very graphical, and they're slides where there is lots of information. Don't read them now. I'll try to highlight what's the most important. You have these slides. There's a bunch of references that you navigate yourself through. So yeah, so that's my message. So first of all, also Dike allowed me to use lots of slides because we are preparing Danish M4Ms. And I just want to ask you for a favor that until May, share it among yourself. Don't share it outside of M4M, ZonMw. Afterwards, after May, the things, it will be anyhow online, so you can do it, because we have the M4M in Denmark in April, so we want to share with you the material, but at the same time, not to distribute it further on between the scope of this group of people. So I'm just going to quickly, just to recap things that you already did. So let's say you have two data sets, and both data sets have average physical exercise duration as a variable. And in one data set, you data creator use a cryptical name, in another it was a very long name, and then suddenly you are a user, you're looking for the data, and you want to find the data sets which contain exercise duration, and you ask the machine to find you the data set, return you what exists out there in the dark. So machine will try to go and find this, but because the data set contained variables which are either cryptical, and even though they're representing the same thing, machine will have very hard trouble, will have a very hard time of finding the data sets. First, because actually the question that you ask wasn't very direct, it was very ambiguous. But then the second thing is that the data sets, even though they contain the same information, same type of information, like in this case, average physical exercise, as a variable, they were not properly encoded. So that's what will basically make machine problematic to help you to do your work. Because honestly, we don't want to do this search ourselves manually. We want to remove burden of doing tedious and boring work to machines so we can do more creative work. That's my take on the machine actionability. So we can do something about, and that's what you've been doing, and that you're trying to do, is to define terms that in this case we are going to use for specific metadata, but the same process is for the data sets as well. And even though we are trying to define common string for the term, it's a good step. But actually what machines really love is to make one additional step, and that is that you have URLs attached to those terms that you're actually defining, because URLs are globally unique and resolvable, so machine actually can visit them, and you can visit them yourself and get additional information. So once you start encoding vocabularies in this way, such that your terms, besides having this human readable preferred label, they have this resolvable URL, you can then really, in a nice way, execute search for the data or whatever, metadata, whatever you're looking for, digital object in general. And that's what machines love. That's why this robot is showing that he's really in love with URLs. So when you execute the search, now when this improved way of encoding information, in this case about variables, and say, hey, give me the data sets which have this URL, machine is actually able to return you back the data set 1 and 2 in this case. So why do we need them? As I said, one of the things, and this is from the paper that Barbara is co-author, these are 4 things that to just recap, is that simply why we're building vocabularies, because then we can use the same concepts in different data sets and they will mean the same thing. We can annotate data, very important, especially if your data sets are large and you want to annotate them properly. And we want to use a standard-based and machine actionable way of building those control vocabularies. And you are a community, so you're going to build something that you will all together use. There is much more rules on the paper that you can read, but digestible, they mean this. It's basically enabling findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Findable, because what you're doing, you're going to index and register in a community or generic service the vocabulary that you're building. Accessible, that means that we are going to make it available on web, because then the term has a URL, and if we do the right job, the URL is resolvable. So when you visit it as a human, you get the description, but if a machine visits the same URL, it gets the machinic representation of the same resource. Interoperable, we are going to use we are going to use standards, and in a standard way to represent the vocabulary, we will map them to the existing vocabulary. And then when it comes to the usability part, of course, we are going to allow people to use the vocabulary under open licenses. And since you're probably going to maintain it, this usability will simply stay over the time. How to build them, just a short recap. Thankfully, there is no 100 different ways to build the control vocabularies. There is only a few, and limiting freedom here is super great. You don't do it in PDF, we are doing it in RDF as a data model. Then we select one of the potential formats of RDF, which is, for example, Turtle, JSON, LD, etc. And then there is only one option, one of the 2 options, either to encode them using SCOS as a representation language, or OWL. So what we selected for this workshop is the most easiest onboarding process for you. And that is, of course, RDF and Turtle format, which is the most human readable and very compact representation of your vocabulary terms. And SCOS simply because SCOS first, S means simple, and it is the recommendation or W3C. And in 80% of cases, you can do everything in SCOS. And next level is, of course, OWL, but for what you're doing now, SCOS is more than enough. As you can see here, SCOS is designed to represent treasuries, classification schemas, taxonomies, control vocabularies, and so on. And I'm not going to show you how, when you start encoding term into the RDF Turtle SCOS, how it looks like. So this is a term that I showed you earlier, which is average exercise duration, and it has this URL. So what you start doing, and what you've already been doing, you're going to attach the preferred label, which is, for example, in this case, average physical exercise duration. You will put alternative labels. You will put a definition, because we already hear that it's absolutely important to have a definition of terms, because it might be understandable for you, but if I'm coming from another domain, I'll not know what actually this means. And then in case that the same term exists in another vocabulary, you do these mappings that you will do as an exercise today. And of course, you can have a broader or this parent term to under which this term belongs to. So you can have this hierarchy embedded, and you can add more properties to annotate. So what you're actually building here and what you see here is a graphical representation of a knowledge graph, because that's what you're doing. You're embedding knowledge into the machine actionable form. And now when we move from this graphical representation into the actual RDF form, this is how the turtle looks like. And I know what will be the first reaction. Yes, of course, it's cryptical. It's very cryptic, and this is where the tooling will help you to overpass this burden of really understanding what is written with all these strange prefixes and so on. But along the way of the presentation and the day-to-day, you will figure out that these things actually can be quite readable. So to make this more simple, we have a whole tool set or a pipeline to do this in the least problematic way. So this is the pipeline. Basically, you will work with sheets, Google Sheets or Excel sheets, and we will use GitHub to trigger automatic process which is called Sheets to RDF, which will take that specially formatted sheet that you will see very soon and turn it into a RDF artifact, which will be posted or pushed to the vocabulary server. And from there onwards, that vocabulary becomes accessible for both humans and machines. So URLs that will be your persistent identifier of the terms will be fully resolvable. So you yourself, you're mainly going to work in Excel sheet or specifically in the Google Sheet, and you will need to press 3 buttons on GitHub to trigger the rest of the pipeline. So you don't need to know GitHub. You just need to have an account, and everybody knows to click. So that's not a problem. Of course, there is an explanation how the whole process operates. And if you're more into like really getting dirty with the technical side, you can go and see how actually what's going on in the sheets to RDF and what's the onto stack and so on and so forth. So mostly we work with sheets. Everybody knows Excel sheets, so there is no problem. And from sheets, you will get the RDF once you trigger this whole pipeline through the GitHub. I'm just going to go quickly through the template sheet. There is, as I said, there is plenty of information. I will try to highlight the most important ones. Still, there are slides, so you can go more deeper later on. So pay a little bit attention. So this is how the template sheet for building those control vocabulary looks like. The most important, it has 3 parts. It has a general setup of the vocabulary. Then there is a part where you're describing metadata about the vocabulary that you're building. And finally, you're getting into a process of actually defining terms and potentially properties that your vocabulary might have. So we already set up this Google Sheet and the GitHub automatic workflow for you. So you will only need to interact with the Google Sheet itself. So I'm just going quickly to show you. So basically, just to repeat again, it has 3 parts: general setup, metadata of your control vocabulary, a part where you're actually defining the terms. 2 things here. So concept URI, that's basically a base URL that your terms will have. So any new term that is defined will be linked to this concept schema URI. Prefixes are just our way of not writing these super long URLs, but you can use these short names or basically abbreviations, such as in this case, we have a prefix ZonMw, which basically once it goes through the process of the sheets to RDF will be actually translated into this long URL, such as http vocab-fair-data-quality.org / whatever. And there is a few things that we define here. So how you're building the vocabulary, you're building by using already existing more generic control vocabulary, such as COS, such as doubling core terms, provenance authoring and versioning. We use a little bit OWL, but just a few things from OWL. And then we encode if values for specific fields have a specific data format. So this is where we use XD, which is XML schema definition. So these are the 2 things that we are setting up in this general setup of the vocabulary. The crucial is that this URI space is accessible, that it works, and in your case it does, because we have set it up to work on the Dike virtual machine where the vocab.fairdataquality.org is pointing to. So in the next part, we have this metadata aspect, and this is, there is a, you can put as many rows as you want. The more richer you describe the metadata about vocabulary, the better. But what you at base minimum should have is a preferred label of your vocabulary, DC title. Then you should list all the creators and contributors that created or contributed to the creation of the control vocabulary. Preferably, instead of the full names, we should use the ORCID IDs, as you can see already here. And coming back to that earlier slide about reusability and rights, there is basically a row for indicating the rights of the usage license, which in this case we set up to CC0. And there are things such as version of your control vocabulary, which is currently set to 0.1. It has a specific form that you can follow, and the date the first date when you created the vocabulary, so initial creation, and then every time we update the vocabulary, we should update the last updated on field, so we can easily track in time what kind of changes we made and connect them to the specific date and time. So what else we have? So now we just, this is sort of like an idea of how you can use the versioning. You can follow this so-called small, minor, and major, which is typical in software development, and depends on how much of modification, whether it's a small, minor, major modification, you're changing those numbers, digits, basically in the pub version field of the template. So what else we have here? Now we get to the point where we actually start defining the terms. So you have a preferred label. Just to let you know, you don't need to touch on the identifier column because identifier column is directly generated based on your preferred label. This is how it's currently set. So when you're coming up with the preferred label of your terms, be sure that you're using only US ASCII character sets, and which includes digits and letters and a few special characters, because eventually that identifier will be turned into URL. And if you use characters outside of this narrow requirement, the URL will not be functioning. So you need to come up, and if you really need to use a special characters, then you need to edit this identifier column so you get the functional character. And this is an sort of example. My name that is written in Cyrillic will never going to be a functional URL, so I need to do modification to turn it, in this case, from Cyrillic to Latin, so it actually turns into a valid URL. So this is, you have the rules here in the bold black. Follow those when you're writing preferred labels. What else? As you can notice, there is this tag @n, which indicates that the preferred label, for currently how it's set up, is provided in English. And you can, of course, change this into the language that you want to add. One thing is important, that you can have only one preferred label per language tag, but you can have multiple preferred labels in different languages. So that's sort of a rule that's course oblige you to follow. Alternative labels are more free. You have multiple alternative labels. The way how we set up the template, simply separate them by comma. And then Sheets to RDF will understand that there is multiple alternative labels and do the proper conversion from Excel, in this case Sheets, actually to RDF. Finally, there is definition. Definition follows the same principle as preferred label. There can be one definition per language tag. So you cannot have multiple definitions for the same language tag. And finally, indicating this hierarchy, you're going to use a scores broader. And the way how you're going to do this is that if a term is under certain parent concept, you need to, for that term, to put identifier, that broader concept, in the corresponding column of the template. In case that the term is actually top term or the parent, you leave this column empty. And that's how the template looks and how it's set up for you. There are actually a few more columns to basically describe and define more richly your terms. And I'm not going to go into too much details because actually Barbara will talk you quite some more about this, particularly in the mapping exercise, how you use a close match, exact match, and so on, and whether you need to deprecate a term or where it's going to be replaced, and who is the creator, contributor. And the bottom line, we can add as many columns as you need in order to more richly describe and define the terms. So once you are happy with the, let's say, first version of your vocabulary, and you want to convert it into RDF and to make it available online, thus resolvable both for humans and machines, you're going to go. Yes?
For that, I just wanted to say, because probably it's not so clear to everybody, we have now, I don't know, 12 different vocabulary lists, right? So all these would then end up into one sheet here. So that's probably not clear to everybody. So we have different lists on different tables. We are going to merge them into this one, right? Nicola?
Yeah, with relation to that. So basically, each of these separate Excel sheets that you've been working with represents a list of terms under one top concept or parent term that needs to be imported into this single template which is there. So as Barbara says, all those will be imported into a single template, and from there on a single control vocabulary will be generated through the GitHub actions that I'm going to show you right now here. So once you have moved those, basically when you concatenate all those sheets into a single one that I prepare for you, what you need to do is basically go to this Git repository, click on this banner, which is a button that will allow you to access a process of triggering sheets to RDF that will generate RDF and spin them on the internet. And once you go there, you'll need to click on the run workflow, and on the run workflow, once click over there, GitHub and actually the virtual machine will take over. It will pull the Google sheet and turn it into RDF. And this is the sheet to RDF workflow, which is automatic workflow executed by means of GitHub actions. It has a bunch of shell, Python, and Java scripts, which will convert Google Sheets to the machine actionable control vocabulary. Very important for you, once it converts it into machine actionable form, it will test the control vocabulary just to figure out if everything is correct. And it will detect the problems, and it will report to you with a very quite depth information of what went wrong or what went well. If things go well and the test pass, it will commit the conversion results and the test log to the Git repository. So you have already version control of your work. So you're basically saving every action you're doing, and you're persisting it on the GitHub. And after that, it will push the RDF to OntoStack, where your control vocabulary will be served to humans and machines. So Sheets to RDF has been used by quite a few parties, us at DT Wind Energy, DIKE, then International Energy Agency, WindTask 32, and so on. And you can see more details of what actually Sheets to RDF is actually doing on this link in the lower right corner. So once the GitHub pushes that RDF to OntoStack, so what is OntoStack is doing, it's basically a bunch of orchestrated microservices that will know if you're a human approaching to that vocabulary through web browser, so it will serve you HTML web page, or if you're a machine, so it will serve you RDF, JSON, LD, and so on, something that machines actually can understand. And it has certain technologies inside, and there are several instances of OntoStack. So which one will we use? We will use this vocab-data-collective.org, and DIKE allowed us to host temporarily, or until you figure out where you want to have your vocabulary hosted, the work you're doing on this URL. So all your terms will be accessible under this concept schema URL, which is actually the actual functional URL, and you can actually already click now and you'll have only one term there. But that's a starting point to see that everything works. And this is how it's going to look like. I'm just showing you now an example from my own domain. So this is one control term called pitch angle. So if I go as a human, I get this nice, very simple web page that I can read definitions. I can see broader concept. I see who created, and as much annotation and information I provide, the more richer this web page will be. But if a machine accesses it, it gets this either RDF, as I said to you, or, for example, JSON LD. So we cover both like human readability, but also very important machine actionability of the control terms. And beware, we need to configure manually to start with BioPortal, so it will automatically load vocabulary from the GitHub, but it needs to be done only once, and afterwards it will automatically, whenever you create a new version of the control vocabulary, which is then persistent on GitHub, BioPortal will daily go pull the latest version and make it available in BioPortal as well. These are like, let's say, this is a simple way of building control vocabulary. You can, of course, go to more professional solutions such as Workbench or Protege, and basically turning pro. What I find very interesting about Workbench is that you can do both OWL and SCOS, where Web Protege is more for OWL ontologies. And it's interesting when you see Workbench how they define different users of vocabularies. So basically they have lurker all the way to the RDF geek, and that's, I'm hoping that some of you will move from being a lurker or understanding this to getting into RDF stuff and becoming more geeky like some of us. And I think that's all from me.
Nicola, I would have one or two questions. First, I think what is also important to say is BioPortal, to upload it into BioPortal, we need 1 day, or it should go, it will be done in the night. So we cannot really see it, right? When we provide all this information, we can push it, but it will not be done automatically and not open and not immediately. That's the one thing.
It's not. It's near real time, so it's not. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen immediately when you submit it. As you said, Barbara, it will happen every night, and that's how it is. That's how the BioPortal is set up. Of course, we can give a nudge to John to speed up the process, but that's always an option. But afterwards, every time, as I said, like every time you make a modification during the night, BioPortal will visit your GitHub repository and check where there are modifications, and if there are modifications, it will parse and upload the latest version to BioPortal.
I mentioned this because we are working with CEDAR, and CEDAR is using vocabularies registered in BioPortal. So we cannot really show this immediately, how this works in CEDAR, but we can show it how it would work if it is already registered and uploaded.
Yes.
And the other...
One important thing here is true that you will not see immediately in CEDAR, but you will see within a few seconds on this URL that I mentioned to you, because changes that you make, and once you trigger the GitHub, it will automatically be visible on the Yonto stack. The Yonto stack is in real time.
Yeah, this is real time. For metadata for the template, it will need 1 day or so. Yeah, and the other thing is, have you included the link to the sheet that you prepared in your presentation? I think not. I'm not sure.
No, I didn't, because we need to invite those who are going to actually edit that, because we don't want to send Google Sheet to everybody because it's connected to the GitHub. So, okay. So I made you a maintainer of that sheet, so you can actually invite those who will actually work on it.
Actually, Jeroen,
for the protection sake.
Yeah, in fact, actually, Jeroen can work with it now, and we will then decide how to deal with it.
Yes, this is about what you have later in the program about maintenance and who is doing what. For the time being, it's only a handful of you who have access to it.
Yeah, and just to also get more comfort related to the earlier question, for example, by Jessica, as Barbara stated, we will publish one vocabulary by ZonMw. If based on the experience we are creating, Jessica, we could also create a separate project, but it needs to be told for the economics or for the social part. So if there is no, let's say, vocabulary specifically for economics or social sciences yet available, we could create it and even publish it by a portal, but then we need to set up a separate project. So that's outside. So you can reuse whatever you learn to also create, let's say, the bigger domain related vocabularies as you go. So that's why Barbara stressed the point. This is one list. This is the ZonMw project. But go ahead, Barbara. This is your slide.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I just wanted to also emphasize one thing from Nicola's presentation, because it's there. It came in at the end, and Barbara even asked a question about it. But you could, we're not building vocabularies for the sake of building vocabularies. We are really interested in getting fair metadata components that are easy to make and easy to reuse and available to people in the COVID program. And that's where CDAR comes in. And of course, just to reemphasize, right, that CDAR is connected to BioPortal, and the vocabularies that we can get into BioPortal can become available to us in our CDAR templates. So I just wanted to emphasize that again, that would close the loop on our exercises. Those CDAR templates would be available then in the portal environments of HealthRI to help us keep track of the research outputs.
Yeah, and I would also say thank you very much, Nicola, for this really nice presentation. And I think if somebody of the data stewards have any question to his presentation, we still should take the time.
I also would like to compliment Nicola because I like the graphics. I like the robot and the man. It's a simple way of explaining the human versus the machine interface. I like it. Thanks.
And you did it, right?
I made it. Yes.
Yeah,
that's why.
But I was inspired by the initial logo that Eric made about M4M. I mean, that's where the head comes. I just added some emotion. So
great.
And Nicola has encouraged me to publish the robot head on Zenodo, and then we can reference that too. So we can have a unique identifier for the robot.
And to also give a short follow-up to the questions earlier about CDAR. Yesterday, Rita and myself had a meeting with John, a very good meeting about the co-localization or localization of CDAR probably in Europe or in the Netherlands. So we are taking steps forward because that's something that was questioned earlier. So that makes probably CDAR in Europe attainable. Right, Rita? Because it's a very important step and we are going to take it pragmatically and we'll keep you involved so that all those questions get answered as well. Sorry, Barbara, it's your floor now.
And Barbara, one last thing, because this is also a conversation I had just earlier this morning with a funding agency in Ireland called the Health Research Board. In many ways, they are parallel to ZonMw in the Netherlands. So they're a smallish biomedical oriented organization, but they are also like ZonMw, pretty agile and pretty early adopters of fair and open and data stewardship. There is now a COVID program at HRB being developed. There is a budgeted M4M workshop for them. And the question will be, what's happened here in this metadata for machine workshop for ZonMw is very much, everybody collaboratively working to build a system here for metadata capture. When the time comes to do this for HRB in Ireland, the question is really then, how much can we reuse? How much will the work done here and the vocabularies built here be immediately ported to HRB and reused? And I don't have answers for this. We will have to see how that goes. But already we can see how the work being done here can be amplified very quickly in the next few months.
Yeah, I think this presentation will then help you a little bit to find out how to reuse existing work. But I really want to know if somebody else has problems to understand something or has any question.
I had A question about, Nicola mentioned the URL that's the basis for the terms, the vocab.fairsharing, I think it was called, that's being hosted on Dike, that's temporary. Like, it's twofold, like it's temporary, so what's the long-term plan? But also, if, like what Jeroen was saying, if we wanted to build, if say someone wanted to build their own vocabulary, how do you set up that URL?
Sure. So Jessica, because I wanted you to experience what it means to have these resolvable URLs instead of just putting something that looks global and it's not resolvable. Dike doesn't have a problem to host it. I mean, as long as there is this virtual machine which I operate, and it's more a matter where it makes sense to be, as you saw, this schema says like vocab.fairdatacollective.org. For me, it probably makes more sense that you call it maybe something ZonMw.something/, and this is something and it's pretty straightforward to set up onto stack to run on one of ZonMw or HealthRI web servers, so we can move that URL to the namespace which belongs and which is more reflective of the project. So I don't know whether that answers your question, but in principle, these are very lightweight artifacts. There is not much of the web traffic, so there is no problem to host them on Dike. But it's better for you as it's more about branding, because now what it is now, it's branding Fair Data Collective, which is fine for me because I mean I'm part of it, but it's more discussion within ZonMw HealthRI project. What is the better way to do this, because you want to brand this, you want to put it that it's your effort, not the effort of Fair Data Collective per se. Of course we helped, but so
that's an excellent explanation, Nicola. So I guess we should make it either a parallel project on the Cedar implementation and take this either along, or and also see how we can brand it, because it's a very important. Yeah. Okay. Barbara, you were asking questions, so maybe there are more questions.
No?
Then the floor is yours.
Okay, so now we step into the work of today. We have to do some work, group work still, and look into our terms, find definitions, and also make our terms, which are cost concepts, at the end, how to make them interoperable. So we will have to reuse existing semantic artifacts. And I try to go to the next. Yeah, does it? Yeah, okay, now it works. So why do we have to reuse other work? The answer is that we have to avoid to proliferate vocabularies, avoid doing a lot of work that has already been done. And on the other side, we have also to make our vocabulary fair, which means interoperable. Yeah. So the I stands for interoperable, and that's particularly important for semantic resources. Vocabularies are indeed designed independently by groups like this one, like or scientists, researchers are working on their own, by different type of developers. They can be more technical, more domain specific. Also more applying this vocabulary for specific applications, yeah, and they have then also other conceptual spaces in mind when they develop and design their vocabularies. So they are following diverse modeling principles and patterns, and they might be therefore also very heterogeneous, but they also overlap in terms of coverage. So there are lots of overlapping concepts out there. And therefore, it is important to really try to increase interoperability. And I want to stress that it is principally very important to build new vocabularies based on existing work. So you have to be clear what is already out there. And what does it mean for us concretely is that we can use whole vocabulary lists that have been already created by others in CEDAR. So in the field definitions, we can say, yeah, to reuse a vocabulary list that we have created, but we can use whatever has been published in bioportal. And also in other portals, but this is a bit more difficult. Yeah, but anyhow, we could decide to use existing vocabularies already, but we will have to create our own vocabulary. But some of these vocabulary terms might already exist somewhere else, and we can decide to import these concepts into our vocabulary. We can also decide to map our concepts to existing other concepts. And we can also decide, we can also decide to reuse definitions from other sources. So these are the possibilities how to make our vocabulary interoperable. So let's go through these different possibilities. The first is just using existing vocabulary lists in CEDAR. As I said, once we define fields, we can allocate, we can find we can decide which controlled vocabularies to use. And these have to be in bioportal. And when looking at these, we can decide to import just one term. Yeah, this is the very left part here, or a whole branch, or a whole ontology. Yeah, but we will do it, for example, for the gender identity, with what Jessica suggested to use. There is already an ontology which tries to address this issue, and there is one parent concept called gender identity, and under it you find a few terms that are the descendants, the child or the children terms of this gender identity term, and these will then pop up in the field when I want to populate my metadata. So I don't have to really include this in my vocabulary. I can just reuse existing vocabulary lists in this case. But the problem is, this makes only sense if we have a whole list, a whole branch, a parent term with children terms that I want to have as a whole included in my template. Another possibility is to import other concepts in my vocabulary that I'm creating. This makes sense if it is exactly covering what I want to capture, and if I would just create it, it would be 100% duplicate. So in this case, it makes sense to import concepts. I would do it by adding the term identifier used in that vocabulary I have selected. So the namespace will be different. It will not be ZonMw. It will be the namespace used in that vocabulary. And I can just enter this identifier in this sheet that Nicola has presented below my parent term. So what I add there is just the information that this term from another vocabulary has now an additional parent term. So it has a broader relation, a property, saying that it is not only part of the original vocabulary, but now it's also part of my vocabulary. But if I choose to do this, I should be aware that I will not be able to change anything about this term because it has been created by others. I will not be flexible when I need to adjust the definition of the term, or I have to shift this concept, this term, within my vocabulary. So I'm not flexible at all. I have just to accept what others do. They can also change it, and I'm not happy anymore with this definition. So I would be cautious to do this, and yeah, I would suggest not to use it here in our case. But it's my feeling. Although I was thinking if we could do this in parts, but there is some risk of inflexibility. Then the other possibility is to map to other concepts, so that we create a concept, a term. So again, I want to define what concept means. A concept is the SCOS specific term to identify a term in a vocabulary. So a term in SCOS is called concept. A term in OWL ontology would be a class. Yeah. So I sometimes use term and sometimes concept, meaning always the same thing in a SCOS vocabulary. Okay. So I have to create my concept. Once I have created it, I can then also map this concept to another existing concept in another vocabulary. And there exists a specific language for that, and there's a specific vocabulary for that. And I have provided the link because it is important to be as exact as possible when matching to other vocabularies. This process is called ontology matching or ontology alignment, but we call it here just mapping. And how can you do that? You have to include the identifier of the chosen concept in the appropriate field of the sheet shown by Nicola. So that's the way how you would do it. So very often the identifier of a concept has not included the label, the preferred label, but just number. So it will be hard for you to understand if this is the correct one, but that's very often the case. Machines understand it and they resolve it. If you provide the right information so that you can also see the preferred label at the end in the application. So SCOS mapping properties, we have 5 of them. We have close match, exact match, broad match, narrow match, and related match. Close match means that we have some degree of similarity between the two concepts. So it is okay to use this property to say that they can be interchanged in some context. If it is, if you have a higher degree of confidence, then we would use exact match, so that it means that this is more or less equal to the meaning that I want to define in my concept. And broad match and narrow match are used to state a hierarchical mapping link between the two concepts. So I can find something that is very near to what I wanted to say, but it can be either more up or down in the hierarchy. And related match is more general, used to state an association between these two concepts. What we also can do is to reuse definitions. So we shouldn't reinvent the wheel. So we should use existing definitions, but if we do so, we have to cite this. So we have to identify what was this source. Where should we look for these definitions, we can use other semantic artifacts, thesauri ontologies, but we can also look into the scientific literature, into Wikipedia, Wikidata, and domain-specific online glossaries. But we also could look into Google search. I think if you add a definition, you can find some definitions. And if they are from a good source at the end, you can decide to take that. So when you found when you have found a definition, you have to populate the fields of the sheet. You have there the definition field where you just copy pasted the text, and then you have the source field, which would then be filled in with the identifier of the term, or just a URL if you have an online glossary, but still you hope that this will be stable. And if this is not possible, then you just, and you have a scientific paper, then you should use the citation style normally used for references. Okay, how can you find all this information out there? We have here prepared some lists that you can look up. So the COVID-specific vocabulary list is rather extensive. I can show it in a minute. These are ontologies, thesauri that have popped up in the last year, worked developed very quickly by a broad community. And Jon was so nice to provide more information about them. I will let you look into that in 1 minute. Then we can also look into BioPortal directly. This is good for us because it's directly usable in CEDAR. You can also find in BioPortal many health-related vocabularies. This is positive for us, so that we might probably find everything what we need already in BioPortal. But you could also look into other repositories like EBI Ontology Lookup Service, OntoB, Linked Open Vocabularies. And here I have also a link to a list of vocabulary repositories that go beyond those that I have mentioned. I've been working on this list with my colleagues with whom I wrote the paper 10 Simple Rules for Making a Vocabulary Fair. Just here a last slide. How can you really use BioPortal for finding good vocabulary definitions for your terms? There are two tools included in BioPortal. One is the class search tool, where you can simply type in your term and you will find definitions and the link to the ontologies. Probably you can see it very well, but here the third entry here, COVID-19, here in bold, you see the definition for the term you were looking at. So you can find it like this and then be linked automatically to that term. Or you can also use the recommender tool in BioPortal. Here you have both the links to it. So I go back to this COVID-specific vocabulary list, and yeah, Jon, would you like to add here something that because I just compiled it, but I think most of the work was done by Jon by putting more information into it.
It's a list of all items which have been encountered, of vocabularies encountered and used by the entire field. It's not extensive, so there are still entries on the bottom of the list that can be added. But these are the most often used ones, and I place them in alphabetical order. So it's not that the top one is the most important one. I made an alphabetical order. And most of those ontologies are also accessible via BioPortal. And where relevant, I included 2 links because BioPortal refers to the origin. For example, with the ZonMw CT, which is available in BioPortal, but also at, of course, the UK organization hosting it. So have a look. If something is missing, please add it. This is a document. We call it relevant vocabularies, as the term states. And if you use the search engine, as Barbara pointed out on the previous slide, or the recommender, those entries probably come up.
I quickly show this here. I'm here in BioPortal. Here you see the ZonMw administrative metadata vocabulary that we built last time. That's very, a very short vocabulary, just including institution and province. What you also see here is deprecated. This is a class that should be always, or a concept that should be always included in a vocabulary. Because if you decide that a specific term should not be used anymore, you should add the information that this term is no more, whatever, one specific term, one specific concept should no more be used, and you say it is deprecated. Yeah, you give this attribute, this property, and then it will be moved into the deprecated. And why is this important? Because all links should always work. So you should come up, for example, to one of these terms that we have just used last time, but will now work further in our specific vocabulary. You will then see here that this is deprecated, so it still works, but it should then link to the new vocabulary that we are going to build. So you never should delete something that has a URI, because other work is probably reusing our vocabulary. So going back to the discussion before, how can we look for existing work done in ontologies? You can use the search function here. And you can type in here your term you are looking for, or you go to recommender and you put in here your text, but also single words, and you would then get ontologies or vocabularies that you can reuse. Okay, now it's 2:30. And I would say that we have now 5 minutes break, but in this break, we have to think about how to organize ourselves, in which, because the next step is really to work with our sheets that we had already, look into those and find out how, to which other which sources we can use to look for the definitions. As you can see here, we have lots of definitions already, but we have also other terms to be checked, like in, I don't know, data or where, when, whom, and then we have to find out, for example, study area, that we need some definitions, and we will then add this definition here. Here we will add under URL the identifier. This source is just an information. You can put here some information that is helpful for you, but what is really needed is URL and definition. This is the next step that we have to do. The question is now how to distribute this work. And if I go to our teams document, we had 6 teams where we decided that the standard team is not more necessary. We should focus on the first 5. We could decide that you work again in the same constellation as the last time and distribute those people who were in team 6 into the other one, or you have to regroup today in other, in other teams. So Jeroen, what is your suggestion?
My suggestion is that, of course, interaction between data stewards is also important, that you see and work with different people. So in my opinion, we should open it flexible. So if the teams are like before open, you can join a team. If I'm not mistaken, Rita and Mike are able to facilitate that those teams are open. But as soon as we see that everyone is going to the social, because it's nice, we are going to party, small joke, then we are going to be strict, and then we reassign people to the room so that we have a, let's say, an equal share in each team. Is that okay? So that we leave it up to you, and then if Rita and Mike agree, right?
So how, but do we need them to write their name somewhere?
Yeah. So that would be nice. So as soon as you, so of course have a 5-minute break, but maybe we, if you share the link in the chat, Barbara, it's already in the minutes, eh? Yeah.
This one. So should we let them write the names under their teams here?
Yeah, and then Rita and Mike can assign it if that's possible. So at all, please include your name in one of the 5 groups.
6, right?
No, 5, because the standards are not going to be used, Rita, because that's already taken care of.
So the first 5, okay. Thank you very much. Then we will have we will meet again at in 5 minutes. So at 14:40. Okay.
14:40. Yeah.
Mike, I've made 5 breakout rooms, room 1 to 5, so we can.
Yeah.
Rita, did you include the option that people can assign themselves? Because previous time it wasn't possible. I had to do the switching because Barbara tried out.
I did allow participants to choose.
Okay, but let's first get the names, and once the names are there, then we can check whether people can auto-assign themselves, and if not, then Mike or Rita take care of it.
Yeah, sure.
Yes?
Rita, je hebt ze nog niet opengezet, hè? Of nog niet op oké geklikt, hoeveel? Oh ja, ik zie het nu. Ja.
Sorry, are we breaking now then, or after we are done with the list?
I think people are already on. Barbara is already on a break, so it's 5 minutes for her, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Well, so we'll pick it up again at 14:40.
Okay.
Yeah, but you can already put your name in one of the groups if you already chose.
If you choose now, you are for the rest.
Rita, ik denk dat we de ruimtes een naam willen geven. Want dat hadden we de vorige keer niet gedaan. Dus was het iedere keer een beetje zoeken. Dus als we het zo... Zullen we dat doen?
Oké, ik kan ze aanpassen naar social 1, social 2.
Ja, precies.
Ik weet niet of dat lukt. Of misschien moet ik ze allemaal opnieuw doen, volgens mij. Dan maak ik ze allemaal... Er is niemand in, dus ik ga ze allemaal opnieuw doen. Oké?
Ja.
Want nu kan ze close all rooms. En rename.
En nu kun je ze rename, ja.
Was de 4e. Ik kan het niet
Ja, ik
meer
zit net ook te zoeken.
kan ik niet.
Kijken. De 4e is data. 5 is services.
Okay. Social 1, 2, virology, data and services.
Yep.
Oh, virology, biomaterial. Ja, I think virology is enough.
Denk het ook. En dan ben ik benieuwd of mensen zelf kunnen wisselen, want vorige keer lukte dat dus niet.
Ja, ik heb ze allemaal als... ze kunnen zichzelf...
Ja.
Dus ik weet het niet. Het is niet mijn... niet dat ik dit iedere dag doe. Dus, je moet ook een koffie gaan halen, Maaike.
Ja, ga ik ook even doen. Tot zo.
Hello, I'm back again.
Me too. I guess we need to shuffle a bit in the let's say participations, because team 4 is now getting too big, and team 5 is only Petra.
Nobody.
Yeah, but Petra.
Just Petra.
Like before. Standing
I
strong.
can stay by myself if you want to.
No. But at least intermingling is also a social aspect. It's good that it happens.
So I can eat 1 minute more.
Yeah, sure. And there are a lot of people I see who have to leave at 4 o'clock. So that's something we should take care of as well, Barbara.
Well, the main work is done now.
I know.
Jenny has already joined one of the groups, by the way.
Okay.
So, I don't know if we want to call her back.
No. Let them go. But at least the group 4 is a bit large, although there are 2. Okay, people are now. Okay, Martijn already switched. Nice. Okay. So now it's even, and then Barbara, you and myself probably either jump between groups, right?
Yes, I will. And while you here still managing the groups, I want to repeat what we should do now.
Yeah,
I
but
hope-
if people are already in the breakout rooms, they won't hear you.
Oh, they are already.
Yeah, otherwise Rita can call them back.
I don't think we are.
There are 22 people here.
We're still here.
Okay. 20-0 now.
So, okay, please don't go to breakout rooms now. Just listen me 1 minute. So the task is to go into your sheet, check whether you have already worked on it, and if you don't have yet decided on the terms, you still have then first to decide, okay, a term is relevant, so it is checked here, for example, for the study area, it is checked. Once it is checked and accepted, then you should look into the definition. If it is not accepted and checked, it makes no sense to look into that. So if you are more than, let's say, 2 persons here, you can also split up and look into definitions for those terms that are already checked and accepted. And the other part of the group could think about the still open issues in that list. So probably it's better to look into the lists that had already been worked on, like population groups, and then really find out, okay, these have to be, yeah, to get a definition. Check if you find an existing term somewhere else. And if yes, then please use the definition and then add the URL. If no, just let it open. At the end, you need to just click here on needs definition where you didn't find any mappings and any other definitions that you can use. I hope this is clear what should be done. If you have questions, please come up now with this. Otherwise, we will help you also afterwards.
Yeah, and if the group is, from experience, if the group is large, so bigger than 2 people, what might help is that the group decides we are all going to look at those which still need a definition. Is because you're co-working in the same sheet, is that you just allocate a cell, put in your name, and then do the definition. And once, let's say, halfway, the group might decide, okay, we are now stopping finding definitions, and we discuss whether the definitions we agree, because then you can take the next step, right, Barbara?
No.
Oh, that's the next
There's
assignment.
so much to do before we do that step.
Okay.
So first of all, we are not defining now, we are looking for definitions, okay? So we are looking for definitions in other terms. That's the first step that we are doing. But before this, sometimes you still have to agree on a few issues that you addressed in the first hour.
Yeah.
So it's up to the 6 data stewards that worked during the week to decide, I think, how to go on in that group that you are. So if you need help finding solutions for the still open questions, then do this the first 10 minutes. But once you have already some checked and accepted terms, some of you can already work on checking definitions. To provide new definitions on your own is another step. It's not been done now. But also not to be checked if the others are happy with it or not. That's the next step. Do first the first step, that's looking for existing definitions that you might agree on. Okay.
And Barbara, do we put a time slot on it? Because the agenda is, of course,
from
moving
now
forward.
on, 1 hour, I think.
Okay.
Is that good, or should we have 40 minutes?
Maybe we should, let's say, reconvene at 15:30. So we'll make it 3/4 of an hour, right?
Okay.
So Mike, you could assign that the rooms will be closed. Let's say 15 with a message starting 15:25, and then yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Any questions? I didn't check the chat, so okay. Still organizing. Do we need to show an example of the URL source before breakout? An example, so that's Eric. Yeah, URL, it's clear, no? So the question was, how can we retrieve, let's see if I go back. For example, this is a URL, an identifier. We need these URLs. The whole HTTP // from here starting on, this is the identifier of a term. Okay. Any other questions?
Yep. So it's that definition and that identifier, correct?
Yeah.
The definition here would be this. Copy paste this one. Yeah. In your the definition and the identifier.
But Barbara, just to jump in, because
is the URL here.
Because we are moving. Okay, so you want to keep the source of the term from the previous vocabulary to indicate in the new one.
Yeah.
I didn't check that. Sorry.
So basically, the reason why we are putting the URL is to indicate the source of the information that we pulled.
Yeah, that's the mapping. We
Yes,
are doing the
okay.
mapping now. So that's the URL of the mapped concept.
Yeah, and the source should be by a portal or
yeah.
those kind of things. So the source is not.
The source. Okay, you are completely right. Sorry, I forgot to say that. As I said before, if we are reusing the definition of a concept, it will also be the source of my definition. But this is something that we copy paste at the end. So it's just a double, we will use this URL for the mapped concept, but also for the source of the definition. So it is enough to just put in the URL, the identifier here, and the text for the definition here. The source is something that we use to address bioportal or something else, but we can also delete this if this is bothering you, because it's just these two that we need now. I will make them bold. Probably this helps. And
Barbara, you just showed us to use the term ID as a URL.
Yeah.
But NCIT lately has a problem. If you're using any terms from NCIT from bioportal, if you use the term ID URL, you're gonna end up in the new NCIT browser, and you're not gonna end up in the term itself anymore.
You should show it to me, but it should not be this one here.
I can show
but
it.
It should be the ID that you find in the vocabulary.
Yeah. But that ID is so if you go to, if you just click Barbara in the class, the search engine.
The search engine, yes.
And you type in, for example, biospecimen.
Biospecimen.
Yeah, biospecimen. Enter. Then you get NCIT, click on it.
It takes long in my...
Yeah, it takes time.
That's
especially in Austria servers, right?
Yes. And now you have this, and if you click on that...
click on it and see what happens.
Yeah, I put it just there. Yeah.
The link is broken, so this is an issue. It's Bruna is correct.
But, NCIT wasn't the only one that had the problem. There was a couple of them. Yeah.
So this is something which is already listed at the issue list, if I'm not mistaken. Even John is aware of it. So please copy the ID. The ID is correct.
But it's not a bioportal issue. It's as I was mentioning in my presentation. This is that usually often you will face this, that these IDs are not resolvable at all, and that's the issue.
But that's the issue of the vocabulary management.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
So, but still, if you copy this,
so we know where it's coming from,
we know from where it comes, and once it is resolved, we will come back to that one. So it's an issue, I understand, but
okay, thanks.
Okay.
But Bruna, what you could do, because then you are safe, is Barbara, scroll down, because then what you do see is the last 7 characters of the NCIT. No, go back to the ID.
Yeah, the code from NCIT.
So in this case, if you copy that one and go back to the NCI thesaurus, which was broken, so the tab to the right.
Tab.
Yeah, in this case, if you see that this is an issue, yeah, you could use this source, what we had already, but it's just to add here this additional information if this URL does not resolve.
But what you could do, Barbara, what I meant is the last step on your sheet is the NCI thesaurus, the one to the right, yeah, and then copy paste that number in.
Yeah, but that's not the URL. That's not identified. This is something that you should put in source. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you go to the, or let me share my screen because
if you go to that, you can then look for it. I understand.
Yeah, exactly.
I know, but that's not the normal identifier. Yeah, that's just a part of the identifier. I understand. Yeah. So you could it's not. I cannot find it here.
Okay, so it doesn't exist then. Yeah.
But anyhow, put there that there is an issue in the notes or so, but so that we can refine it. Okay.
Let's break.
Okay. We should break. So we have only 35 minutes from now on.
Okay, then we can maybe everyone try to assign them, and those who can't assign themselves, Mike and I will do it.
I can open again my. Where is it?
Yes, with the names. That would
the
be...
names. Yeah. Sorry, I'm looking for it. Lost in space. Here, Teams.
Yep. Okay. First one, Jenny and Kana are already there. In 2, still missing Renata, but Renata didn't know how to assign herself, so I'll assign you, Renata.
I will assign Petra.
Yes, Clara, I also don't know how to assign myself.
This was, I couldn't hear. Clara?
It's Clara, yes.
And you want to be in which room, because I can't see everything?
In
4.
I think I chose 4, yeah.
Eta.
And Jessica, where do you want to be in?
Eta.
Okay. Anyone else who needs assigning?
Yes, me too, please. Elisa.
Elisa, and you need to go to
3.
I will assign Elisa. That's virology, biomaterials. Okay.
Oh, there.
Zora and Mariam, where do you want us to put you in?
So I imagine Zora and Mariam are both, I think, observers. So most.
Yeah, but they might want to see what happens in the breakout room.
Oh, Mariam wants 4. I will do it.
Yeah.
So data, I'll send.
Oh, both. Oh no, team 4, both of them.
Oh, then team 4 is very full.
Yeah, but it's our observers, it's not an issue.
Okay, so I'll send Zora also to team 4. Because now we have team 2's got team 1, social 2, social. Okay, social 1 has got
2.
people. Social 2 has got 4. Virology, biomaterials got 4. Data has got 6, and services got 2. Anything we should do about that? Ask someone to move from one to the other, maybe, because I know that Bruna said she didn't mind where to be put.
Eric, where do you want us to put you in?
Bruna, I think in services. No.
Bruna wanted in services. Okay, she went from by herself to data. Shall I move her automatically?
No. It's okay, just there, as you think. Yeah, I think Yaron should.
No.
It's just that services and social 1 are quite meager.
Yeah, maybe Eric one. Eric, you want to join one of those, the smaller ones? So social or services?
Ask me not to.
Yeah. So,
sorry.
I'll stay here for now. I want to kind of consolidate some of the things that we've seen here.
Great.
We can also send a message to all and say,
Oh, okay, yeah.
shall I
But
go
if-
to the data group and say if there's anyone who wants to go to services or social one?
Yeah, so ask 2 people, one to go to social and one to go to services, because then it's 3, 4, 4, 4, 3.
No,
So
not
2 people.
really, because there's 2 observers in data.
Okay.
So it doesn't really matter. So what shall we do? One from data and one from virology?
But Nicola is also in data. So
Okay.
that could be that if I go to social one, for example,
Yeah.
and Barbara goes to services or the other way around, then the groups are
Yeah,
big enough.
because I think 2 people only is maybe a bit scary.
Put me in social one, please.
Okay.
I will go then to services.
Yep.
Okay. Talk later.
Letters.
Okay. Oh, I sent Erik.
But I declined your offer.
Ah,
Yeah.
There you go.
So-
You're back. It was my mistake. Sorry.
So guys, I think we had a moment there where I think during Nicola's presentation, at least for me, it started to come back and form a picture here, like, you know, why we've been doing all this hard work in November and last week, and all these Excel spreadsheets and all these mini presentations and instruction. But, you know, I think Nicola is taking us that last step now to show us, yeah, this, if we've gone through the trouble of doing all this, we are now very close to an automated process for creating, you know, a machine actionable vocabulary. That's cool. That's really, really cool. So,
I think the talks of Nicola and Barbara were very clear. So they, for me as a lake, how do you call it?
a layperson.
Yeah. It is exactly all the time you think, how are they going to do that? That's the answers were in those talks, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really, really good.
Mhm.
Fantastic.
Yep.
So, and, you know, for me, it's also very nice. We will, I think by the end of today, you know, we've got almost, you know, I think we have the hardest part of the job done. There's still probably then some things to do in February, still in March, as far as building templates and maybe still having some discussions on that. But otherwise, we're there. You know, these guys know how to create metadata now.
Oh, and we still need to find a way of making it visible
Yes.
on the portal. So that's, I think, still a step to go.
Yeah.
And we're still going to need the champions for that, I think, to give us
think
advice
so.
on how to present what is in what SADA format, how we better can show it in the portal.
And in
And
the
the part of the SIDA localization that we started yesterday with John, that will most probably, we had a nice talk with John yesterday, Margreet, Jeroen and I, to try to have really practical steps, start very, very simple to see what can be done. And I'm hopeful that that will lead to real practical implementation steps for us, for maybe also for Africa and Asia. But then if we learn how to do it, then I think we can go forward from there. So, but there's still quite a lot of work there. Sorry to say, Erik.
well, there's, but you know, the metadata cycle, I guess,
yeah,
will be, you know, we'll have turned the crank on that one complete time, and that'll be quite nice.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's I think pretty cool. And then I mentioned last night or early this morning, I don't know, Margreet, in those emails,
yeah,
that now I'm at the point in my own mind that I want to start writing a report on this, or what happened document, and what worked, what didn't, what gaps do we have, what else do we need, and then it's a question. There's still so much development to do, so many interesting things to do. The question is, how are we going to find time for people to continue? And maybe AMR is an example of how we can continue this work. But I have a feeling there will be a lot of requests from the champions, for more training or more consulting or more development on this. So maybe we'll see, but maybe there will be a moment then where we have conversations about how do we take the next steps.
Yeah. So the next step will be to work with the people who are interested to do this, the metadata for machine workshops like AMR and the others and HRB. And then all the time I'm concerned when I read about a conference like I showed you yesterday of iCoda. They are putting together all the platforms and all the data sets, et cetera, that are also being made for COVID.
Not going to make it public, so it doesn't really matter. Recording restarted.
So I have 2 minutes to get back to the main room.
I'm just going to get some glass of water. So be right in a minute.
Erik, when does Anneliese want to have her workshop? Does she have a deadline or?
Yeah, she mentioned that.
Oh.
Whoa!
I can say
this was brutal. This was really brutal. We're getting into speed. Finally found gear number 6.
Yeah, we try to warn you though.
Yeah, I know, but since I'm a co-host, I get a different warning compared to the others. Yeah.
Last time I was pulled out like you had to stop in the middle of a sentence, but this time it was announced. Yes, I would like to report something back that I experienced in the group that was group number 5 about services. And there was a general question that might be interesting for everybody. And I think the question was, do we want to have included in our vocabulary real instances or only types? So what we have here, we are talking about biobanks. So do we have biobank as a parent term, and the children from this list, are these then instances like a concrete biobank or also subtypes of biobanks? So this could happen for each of the vocabulary lists that we are doing. So it is up to us vocabulary managers here, the whole group, the community, to decide what type of information we want to add here. In an ontology, you would not have at the lowest level types, subtypes, but real instances. But we are not in an ontology. We are working for a thesaurus and that is a simple flat hierarchy. And there we decide what we want to have included in a vocabulary. It could be instances, but it could also be subtypes. So I hope this instance and subtype is clear what is meant with it.
Maybe just to add to that, Barbara, because we had that discussion, it means that now on the tab that we have are, for example, 5 or 6 biobanks listed. And what we want to do is just have the option biobanks, and then, for example, as a subtype, clinical biobank, and then you can select PALGA, because that's the real biobank where you get your samples from. So not just starting with PALGA, but putting PALGA at step 2 or step 3.
Yeah, the question is if this really is then seen in CEDAR. Yeah, CEDAR is the template system where you have your fields, and the fields are connected to lists, right? So if you really want to see this differentiation between these types, this makes it, I have to rethink it a little bit, because CEDAR is a bit strange in this regard. You don't see the hierarchy. You see just what is under that list. Yeah. So either you upload, or you can have more than one list included in that field, but you would probably not see the parent name. You just see the options. So
in this case, what you meant, Barbara, is that the biobank will be there, the clinical biobank will be there, as well as PALGA. And I guess it's up for the, in this case, project to decide whether they want to be specific, saying I have used as a resource PALGA, right? Or that they state I have used a biobank.
Yeah, but it depends really on the design. Yeah, what you
I know.
really get. Yeah. And I think that we are doing here 2 things at once. We are, first of all, creating vocabulary. This vocabulary might be used also for other purposes, not only for the CEDAR template. So for I as a vocabulary manager would always try to be as precise as possible. So I would do these distinctions. But CEDAR is a bit working differently. It doesn't give you all the possibilities that the vocabulary would offer you. So it's up to you as the vocabulary designers to decide how precise you want to be. Yeah. Because it might be used also for annotating your data or for whatever, not only for metadata about what your project, but also for your data or for something else. Okay.
Barbara, what is the option that people have to maybe start one way and then later on they want to change it?
Yeah, so the option, we have still the option always. Vocabulary work doesn't end today. It doesn't end of February. It is an ongoing activity, yeah, and it should be, because it should be flexible over time. And this is why also Nicola helped us with his pipeline to update the vocabulary as we need to do it. So this can change over time. The identifiers stay there, but the concept can move from one parent concept to the other, so from one list to the other.
Yeah, and in this case, the example you gave, PALGA is a concretization of something, which is not a term in itself. It's a concrete item, right? It's an example.
It's
an instance, yeah, exactly. So that's a different thing, I guess.
It's not really different. It's up to us. We can say it's just also listed here as a sub-concept, but it is at the same time a real instance.
Yeah, okay, but if we could make clear, and then Nicola, please help me. If because we didn't touch that part yet about instances and those kind of things. So if PALGA as an instance is chosen, that also the information available at, let's say, higher levels is included. And so it's a clinical biobank as well as a biobank.
It's pointing up to the broader terms. So you have those inside of the.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, how do we do that in your sheet? So if for example, now I included Palga as a term, should I then do the broader course concept?
Yes, broader
is biobank, and then broader is clinical, and broader is because then you have two brothers, so you get a hierarchy of brothers.
Yeah, you can actually. What I don't know now. Here, Barbara can help me. Very that's a good approach. You can have multiple broader.
You could have this polyhierarchy, but why should I have that in this case, Johan? I don't understand.
No, at least for machines, then they can reason through. Right? The human still sees Palga as it's inside, but at least the relation is still valid. As Nicola.
Yeah, but it will be a specific data biobank, right? Palga is a specific data bank. Biobank, what? Sorry. And this is the only broader term that I would link to.
Yeah.
And it's only the template of CEDAR that I'm not sure how when I populate it, this is clear that this is a sub concept of another term.
Okay, that's what is probably not directly visible. Maybe there are some. We need to ask John whether there are tricks to include also a parent, also to pop up as well.
Yeah.
Because that is some kind of value sets which I'm not sure, and this is something that we discussed in the group where I was with the data, because usually my approach when I'm tagging data in platform that I have at DGU is that I start with the top level concept, and I start adding, going more and more and more narrower, because then I allow both those who are searching on the broad concept, but also on those who are searching on the narrow concept. So people looking for specific things and people looking much more broader things.
So, but Nicola, if I understand you correctly, that now I have a list with almost everything in detail, then you also want the broader concepts there.
Because you're linking, you want to have those hierarchy established.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, but then I can add them for you. That's not a problem.
Yeah, we can add them. Yeah, because it's nice to have those groupings to indicate this broader parent term.
Okay.
And it's not you don't necessarily need to have only one. You can have multiple. You can have like deep, like in taxonomical representation with the like tree structure going everywhere. I have it like, for example, for wind energy, that I have atmosphere, then I go like more step forward into the depthness of information.
Okay, I can give it a try.
Okay, and then we had another discussion that it might come that you have a definition that might be helpful in another source than the mapped term. So, for example, we found a mapped a concept that we would like to map to in SNOMED, but this had no definition. And but it might make still sense to map to SNOMED, because this is a real good ontology, and we want our ontology to be interoperable with that one. But unfortunately, that concept has no definition. So you could then look up for another definition. And if this definition, or from another concept, and if this definition really fits you, then you can take that. Then your source identifier would be a different one than the mapped concept. If this source is Wikidata, then you should just put in this source, but it's not a mapped concept within another ontology. If it is another ontology or vocabulary, then you would have a second mapped term. Any other issues that you encountered?
Jessica, sorry for poking you. Maybe you can explain what we were discussing about relates on this, like the terms which are on the same plane.
Yeah, there was a discussion when we were working on it last week, and then we talked about it today, is that there's a large section of data where there's one data term, electron or health record, patient health record or whatever, and then a variety of other terms relating to health or physiological data that could both be part of a health record, but also a data concept on their own. And they're not necessarily a subclass. Like the example I gave from the research I'm supporting, our subjects, the research subjects are people with disabilities. And so there is information collected on what the nature of their disability is, but that's it. And so I figure that's more like medical history, but not necessarily a researcher filling in the metadata wouldn't necessarily think that's a health record, because it's not really a health record. It's just some information about their medical history. So we put notes next to all of the different concepts that could potentially be part of a health record, but also stand alone as their own health or biological concepts as data.
Yeah, as I said, in the SCOS vocabulary, we have a bit more freedom how to organize our concepts. In an ontology, you would be much more strict and really probably decide to have distinct concepts so that they don't overlap. But in a SCOS vocabulary, you can have these partially overlapping concepts, because they are used in your context. They are used sometimes. They are used in parallel, depending on the context. So that's totally fine to have that, but you have to define what is really meant with it, and then it's fine to have this.
Barbara, what about using when we were looking in the SCOS primer, using SCOS relate, which seems by the primer that is often used to indicate these partial overlaps between two.
Yeah, so this mapping relations or properties can, I mentioned them in the context to external vocabularies, but you can use, for example, the relate also within the same vocabulary that you are creating. You would not use broad map because you have a broader relationship anyway. You say, what is your parent concept? But you would use this relate for sure. That is possible, that I can link from one concept to the other within the same vocabulary. Yeah. In this case, you could say that the partial overlapped concept has to do something with the other concept. But we have not foreseen any field now in our Excel sheet, but you could add this information.
No problem at all. I mean, that's really like, for me, like I can quickly just add that.
I know.
So no problem at all.
So in your sheet, that's one part, but in our sheets, so we have two sheets. So we have not foreseen this. And I must also admit, I made an error. So I explained that there are possible different mapping properties, but I only had one field foreseen now. But I have added a definition node, and in this definition node you could add, this is a broader or a narrower match mapping. Yeah, but I don't think that we are going into these details at the moment. So we will not finish today with the whole exercise. So it was to get into the exercise to understand a little bit the process.
There's a question in the chat which is relevant. Danny asks, it's going too deep now because he gets lost and doesn't know where we are talking about. Maybe we should go to the next step, and I'm looking for a picture which I have used in teaching before. It's a kind of Venn diagram picture which exactly shows, with some examples, shows what we are discussing about. There's certain terms might have overlap but are part of different domains, and I guess it's going too far now, but at least we need the definition. And what you were talking about, the definition node, we also need an additional column because in the group I was, and sorry, I had a complete outage, so the entire surroundings in my neighborhood went down, so that's why I was lost. My apologies, or I should, how do you call it? Fine KPN or whatever it's called. But at least, maybe Jenny already thought we also have still some things which need to be discussed by experts. How do you indicate that in the sheet? So, for example, needs a definition. Is that enough, or do you want to have and there are so many options, we don't know which one to pick.
Okay, so first of all, now we will have to find out. We have 1 hour and 10 minutes left till the end of the workshop. How do we want to? Yeah, some have to leave already. I've seen. So how do we want to invest this time? First of all, it would be good to understand if we have, if in each group there were some mappings already happening or not, or if you had a problem at all. So was there one group without any progress because too much discussion about how to do it? If yes, then I would like to know it. If you did some progress, then that is fine, then we can go on. But first I have to identify the main problems that you had to really do some progress.
In group 3, we made some progress. The only issue was that beforehand, everything was clear until we had to start working on it. And then we had additional explanation and additional explanation and additional explanation. And then the additional, all that extra information prior to getting started got us confused again if we did understand it correctly the first time. So sometimes elaborating on what we need to do makes it more unclear. That was a bit confusing. So the last 5 minutes of explanation before we actually started in the separate groups made sure that we knew less of what we could do than we did before those 5 minutes.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I'm not totally aware what you are addressing at the moment.
It's simply that sometimes people want to explain better. Oh, this is what you have to do. Yeah. Let me explain it again. This is what you have to do. And they say it in a bit different way. But sometimes once is enough. And then perhaps you could just visit the separate groups, because more information just makes people's minds drift sometimes.
Yeah, could be. Yes.
So we were getting back to the original assignment. And it took a while to make sure that we were on the same page again, and we still understood what we were supposed to do.
Yeah, but is it now clear what was the original question or activity you are asked to?
Well, yes, except for that we weren't sure anymore what we weren't supposed to do. So we found some errors and some additional information that was missing. We added that. Then we wanted to make sure that we added the right checks in the checkboxes, and then we thought, oh no, we weren't supposed to do that anymore. That was not for this session, or that was for a later part of the session. And there was a bit of a discussion before we started in the still larger group, and that made it a bit confusing. So we're allowed to check the boxes if we adjusted the information that was incorrect or that was still missing. That was unclear because there was a lot of discussion about it beforehand.
Okay. Understood. It's a bit also, confusing, not so easy to do this work all online, because I should be in different rooms at the same time.
No, I think it's simply that sometimes everybody's explaining something, and maybe if one person explains, then we start, and then we'll just figure out the missing pieces as we go. It's easier sometimes.
Totally understood. Any other comments about difficulties to start working, or
I recognize to some extent what Elise is saying. We in our group, we went through the list again, and but in a way it was the things we had to do last week. But I think that the list is now much better than it was, so I'm very happy with that. But we're not able to really start with finding the right definitions and mapped concepts. Danny asked a question about that. I think that is to some extent answered, but still, since I'm just a simple researcher and not a data specialist at all, it's kind of new, which makes it complicated to really make progress.
Yeah, and you had really this experience that this list become more concrete each time when you look at it. Sometimes some new questions pop up. You have to review this. So it needs some cycling process to get this really good, to come to good lists. So it's a bit hard to do everything into workshops of 4 hours. But the idea is that you understand a little bit the process, how you can get to the final product. And I suggest now that we could go on, so we have only 1 hour. We could go on for something like, let's try 10 minutes to work on definitions on those concepts that you, so on 1 or 2 definitions of terms that you worked on, and then we switch the groups and let check other groups if they could agree on these definitions, because this is what we always do. So first we look into existing terminologies. Can we use that definitions? Then this is what you did now. The second step is, if I didn't find any mapping, then I start defining on my own. And the third step is that I need to let this checked by another group. And when they are fine with my definition, then this is the goal for publishing this concept. If they are not fine with this definition, then this is a critical term to be evaluated and defined by an expert. And these are the steps that you should do when you do vocabulary work. So I would say it would be good if we take time till 4:10 to find definitions or define our own definitions for some of the terms. And once you have that, yeah, you come back in, I think if in 15 minutes that must be possible. And then we switch the groups and they look into the work you did. And then we meet again and reflect on what we did so far. That would be my proposal.
I've reopened all the rooms again.
Yeah, if possible, in the same rooms as you were. And then we meet again in 15 minutes and switch on those terms that you did not you could not find any definitions yet. And probably not everybody is here anymore, but then just those groups that we have, because I think Petra had to go, so we don't have.
Yeah, so you would be alone in the services.
No, I don't do the service. I go to the other groups and help there.
So service is now empty.
So we have 4 groups, right?
Yeah.
I had a question.
Yeah.
If you go on BioPortal and search for gender and click the first search results, and you search for gender identity and you click the first search results, then they both describe gender. But for one, there is definitions available, but there is no row that what was it called, is interpreted by, that lists several types of genders that are appropriate for that search result. And the other has a class definition, but has no interpreted by. Which would you then choose?
These are different resources, right?
Yes, the one is from, I think, National Cancer Institute, and the other is SNOMED or
So
Snow.
it's up to you to decide what you find more appropriate to use. So it's.
But what do you say in the definition if one doesn't have a definition?
So then you cannot take that definition. So you cannot take that that source for your definition.
You mean
if
this?
you like? Yeah,
one?
you have genders. Oh yeah, that's both of them. Yeah. So the first one has an interpreted by, but it doesn't have a definition.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's common known that SNOMED doesn't provide clear definitions, but NCIT does. So I would recommend to use this definition.
Yeah.
And what would you?
And this then all if you go here, it's just a recommendation. Of course, you need to. I hope my internet doesn't crash anymore. And so here, this is the definition, as Barbara pointed out.
Yeah.
And the URL is this one, although it might be invalid. But this one is the one to go for.
And does this one also give possible answer values that are valid?
Here, unknown female male. So this probably is not the gender as Jessica pointed out, because we have a proper list by
gender, yes.
Yeah.
But the definition still could be valid.
So you could use the definition and then use as a mapping value the previous one, go to SNOMED, because that has an extensive gender list.
Yeah,
so this one.
All right. Okay.
And then you make a note in the...
So the note is you have two IDs, one for the source, for the source of the definition, and the other one would be probably the mapped concept. But
exactly.
You could also have two mapped concepts. But the definition comes only from one.
Okay.
Okay, can we now break in rooms and work there?
Everyone is in rooms apart from Renata, which I don't seem to be able to move there because she's already been assigned there to social 2. So Renata, maybe you can, Renata's gone. So.
And Rita, you want me to go to services? I'm not going to services.
So services is empty.
Empty.
So there's enough people in data. There's Elisa, Evelina, and Jan van der Tusse in virology. Social 2, there's also 4. Social 1, there's 2 people. There's Jenny and Kakana. So maybe you could go to social 1.
Yeah.
I will add to it. Oh no, where are you? Move to social 1. Yeah, I've moved you to social 1. Good luck. She's gone. Okay, so 10 minutes from now, right?
Yep.
Yeah. My video is not on, sorry.
You can put me in social 1 as well, right? I was there because I am completely deranked now. I cannot do anything because I'm a system.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't.
No issue.
Okay, shall I put you to social 1, and if you want them to move to a different one in between, then I'll move you to social 1. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Done. Ja, Margreet, je hebt een mooie kabel voor je camera. Hetzelfde als ik trouwens.
Ja, mooi. Werkt die goed? Ja, inderdaad. Is het alweer afgelopen?
Nee. Weer ze zijn terug naar de eigen breakout rooms. Om even wat af te maken. Dan komen ze terug over 10 minuten. En dan gaan ze elkaar zijn werk min of meer gaan controleren. Dus van breakout room wisselen. Ja. Er was wat confusion door heel diepe discussies tussen Nicola en Barbara, denk ik. Ik was ook een beetje lost, to be quite honest. Maar het is alles goed. Sorry, Eric, I was in Dutch again. But you can follow it all now.
I think I was following, yeah. And,
it's easier to follow it from a non-Dutch than if it's two Dutch people talking or not.
Is it easier?
Yeah.
If the people are not Dutch?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. I think it really has to do with how fast people talk, for me.
Yeah.
There are some people, who speak, fluent Dutch, but if they just speak slowly, I can follow.
Which push me in another room?
Which one do you want?
Me, and I have to go to each of the rooms.
Okay, I'll move you now to 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Move you to social 2.
Yeah.
There you go. Bye bye. See you in a couple of minutes. There you go. Yes. Sorry, Dick.
Oh, yeah, no. Sometimes I can follow people who speak, I don't know. There's certain people I can follow better than others.
So I think this is also an intense session for our champions, right?
Another one, yeah, for sure. I'm trying to put together some slides now that lay out, well, to say a big thank you to them, but then are hinting at where this is going. So.
I just got a message from Lisa, my colleague. She was in the biomaterials group, but maybe you already solved it. But she got the impression that people there were a bit confused on what. Well, probably you recognize it.
So that's what Lisa was saying, that maybe.
Yeah, she was there as an observer with I don't know who else. I had to do all kinds of other things in between, so I could not join one of the groups.
She's not there anymore. But what the feedback we had is that maybe we gave too much explanation just before everyone entered the rooms, and that people are a bit confused. If we just let them loose, maybe they would have just gone on with it. But we try to oversimplify it by making it more complicated. So I'm not
sure. And in the breakouts, they actually decide on these terms, these ontologies, etc.
Yeah.
And that's the confusion because it. Okay.
It's extremely difficult to do this online anyway. So it's that we have gotten this far. I think it's already a fabulous achievement, right? So.
Well, it's funny because when we started thinking about metadata for machine workshops,
which one now? You want to go to virology biobanks? Let me move you. Bye-bye. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, when we first started this, right, this was like way before COVID. So we were always thinking like, oh yeah, these would be face-to-face workshops. Gee, I wonder if we could ever deliver these things, online. And that was always seen as a distant possibility, like no, why would you do that? It'd be so much work, or that wouldn't work so well, And now here we are, really developing everything that's completely online.
Doing much more online than you could ever imagine.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the whole metadata for machine workshop is completely different, don't you? Did you envision this 1 or 2 years ago?
Well, this is, like I said, I just envisioned this, but in face-to-face.
Yes.
We would be doing this at the Port Cabal, right?
Yeah.
In our breakout, if we had a breakout room, it would be just somewhere in the office there. And then, then we thought like, oh yeah, well, if people want it somewhere else, could we deliver it online? But that seemed like such a huge leap. Like I don't know, it's such a big commitment to do it online. It's very different. But now, it's a question, what does this look like if we take it offline? We actually do it physical.
You have to buy coffee and tea and
yes, exactly.
Cookies and wine and beer and
sandwiches and but yeah, I mean, how awesome would it be, right? If at like 5 o'clock, we could all sit down and have a drink together.
Yeah.
That would be so much.
We're trying to do something. We're trying to do something like that with the NF Clinical Data Work Group. That we now rounded up what we thought was the first part of the project that would have been done in October or something. It's rounded up now. So the mapping to a template. So wait, and data. You want to go to data. Bye. So and now we are starting to map real data to that template. So we want, I want to make some kind of celebration but online, every type of celebration I've seen online doesn't give me the kind of excitement that I think we should have. And really, it's really an achievement what we've done online last year as COVID activities. Absolutely. It's extraordinary, I think. and the commitment and engagement of people in to these activities is I find really encouraging. So that's my view on the world. It was so if you have ideas on how to do this, on how to celebrate this online, as the Dutch say, ik hou me aanbevolen, because I haven't found the crystal ball. No, no. I think for example, the refuse may be a bit easier because there's a smaller number of people that we can just maybe send a small beer package or something for us to drink together online. But for the ZonMw project, it's quite a large amount of people. Hi, Barbara.
Hi.
I'm going to close the rooms because we have 2 more minutes left and it takes 2 minutes for them to return. Yeah?
Yep. Oh, I didn't stop the recording. We've been talking about beer in the recording, but it's okay.
If that's all it was.
No, absolutely nothing else. Now we were saying that we've achieved a lot with this workshops online, Barbara, which is chapeau for you as well. And we're trying to see how we could have our drinks together after finishing this.
I think I will just drink something together with you when everything is finalized.
Yeah. No,
it's so much to do.
Yes. That we have come very far as well.
Yeah. It is, you know, we really needed to have several refinement cycles. Yeah, that's the issue.
I'm going to send you a picture. Wait, if I can find it.
So Eric, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
So I think what would be great is that at the end, each of the terms are get a ticked box for checked accept. Yeah, these two must be clear, and probably I have to add something else also, like qualify or quality checked.
So Barbara, maybe you have already a slide or some bullet points on like what happens next.
We are back.
Yeah, back. Okay. That's fine. Everybody's here?
I guess so, because the rooms were closed.
20.
Mike was strict.
So at least now every group should have some green lines, but I'm checking for group 1. No, services is the wrong one. Okay, I can find. Okay, there are in each group at least 2 terms that are marked green. And but it's not totally clear in which tab this is. But I think it's quite easy to find, for example, where, when, whom, it is in population groups. And you should look for these green highlighted terms and then add another column, or I will add it for you, which will then be called quality checked. And if you have checked it and you agreed, how can we call it? It is then accepted, quality checked and accepted. Then it gets another box. So I will show what I will do.
Barbara, why don't you call it verified?
Verified. Oh, thank you. Sometimes I get out of ideas. Okay, I can share this with you. Do you see the screen and the where, when, whom?
Yep.
Given? So I will add here another column, verified.
Barbara, we were working in surveillance phase.
Okay, not here. Okay, this one.
No problem. Yeah.
Here is one. So then I would add here, before both, I will add here verified. Okay. And we will then copy this. Strange that it. Yeah. So there are boxes, and the other group should look at it, and if they like it, they will then also click on verified. Okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
So,
no.
Barbara, maybe just to make clear, because we were looking for definitions. And are we allowed to use Wikipedia, for example, as a source for definitions? Because
Yes.
the definition there was okay, but it was not in BioPortal, for example. You
Yes,
couldn't
that's
find
what
it.
I said. That for the source, it could be another definition. For the definition, you could use another source.
Okay, we did. Okay.
So now I would like other 10 minutes. I think it's not necessary to have more time than 10 minutes for two concepts here, to break in the different rooms in different constellations. So the persons that were in group 1 should go now to another Padlet, you know. So what can we do? We can go to the teams, and we can say that team 1 will look, this group of people will look into team 3. So this team 3 had, what was the topic?
Biomaterial.
We look in biomaterial, okay?
That's in the virology biomaterials, it's the name in now, so.
Sorry?
The name is now virology in the breakout room, so that people are maybe put virology.
But the table is biomaterial.
Yeah.
And social 2 is looking into data. And virology, biomaterial looks into the first one, the where, when, whom. But what was it? Setting. That was setting study area. So that's the first one, the social one.
No, surveillance phase.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, please put in the tab here in which they have to look into. So this is hard to write at the moment. Surveillance. Yeah. And
I will put a link. Yeah.
And data, team 4 should look into social 2, and that's population group, right? Can you, is this clear what it has to be done?
Let's see if everyone can assign themselves, and whoever cannot, I will move to other groups.
Yeah, and I will add this verified column in each of them. This I have done.
Barbara, do we go back to the same breakout room that we were in and now look at the sheet of somebody else?
Yes.
Okay.
Check. Yeah. So here, where, when, whom should go to the biomaterial tab. I don't know which tab it is exactly, but there will be green highlighted terms.
So I'm not sure if the message has been clear. I think some people moved to different breakout rooms and some people stayed in the same room and looking at the different tables. So
I was stuck in between rooms.
Oh, so
I need
Barbara,
to go to data.
Yeah, so what's the idea? Do the people that were in breakout rooms stay in breakout room and look at a different thing? Or do they go to a different breakout room?
So this team 1
should
go to the team where with they should look into the biomaterial stuff. So it doesn't, but they are now in the whole group, in our group, no? So they have to go.
No, there's a lot of people that have already moved to different groups, but some people went to the same breakout room they were before, and some people went to the new breakout room.
Okay, I don't know if they have names, this breakout room.
Yeah, they do. Names? They have names, so that's why I was.
That's the issue. That's the issue. Okay.
So I will.
Can you move them out again or so?
All of them?
I don't know.
Add them. I will try to add them to the right breakout sessions.
Yeah, if this is possible. Yeah, if this is possible for you, can you do that, please?
I can do it, but I'm not sure if everyone will understand.
Yeah, I go to each of them. To each of them.
So I will, okay, let me just go to, Jeroen has to go to biomaterials, biology. I will move you soon, Renata, wait a second.
Yeah.
Oh no, but Barbara took away this sheet. I don't know who has to go where now.
Should I share that with you?
Yeah, share it, please. I don't have the link open at this precise moment.
Yeah, so here we go. I think this should do it.
Same for Clara, I imagine. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah.
So if I could see it from the top, social 1. Oh, it's now different. Jenny and Kakana. Yes, no, but they're there. I don't understand anything anymore, to be quite honest. Social 2, Dani and Peter and Renata. Renata, I'm going to add you to
4. I was assigned to 4.
But you were before with Peter and Dani, right? So I will add you to Peter and Dani.
This list has the name of people how they were in previous.
Yeah, so I will try to make them put them together. Renata, if you could accept. And now virology is Elise, Jan, Evelina.
How can I accept? I don't have any pop-up.
Oh, I sent you. I do not know.
It says social 2.
Yeah, they're just okay. It's just a group. It's just a name. It's it's the right people in there.
Okay.
So. And Clara, you are supposed to be in data, right? But you're already there, so I'm not sure how I can move you even further. You're supposed to already be there.
Yeah, I didn't join because I kind of sent it again because I thought we should be going to a different room. So
yeah, I know you're absolutely. There was confusion here.
So it
just
was
join.
a confusion because of I didn't know that the groups have a name. Yeah.
Yeah. So please go back to where you were to the data group, and you'll have the right people.
I can't join it again without the pop-up that I had before. I can't join it.
I will move you to something else, and then move you back to data. Let's try, okay?
Yeah.
Don't accept, and then I'm going to move you back to data. Let's see if it works. Did you get the pop-up now?
So you're now inviting me to data.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. It's okay. Go, just go.
Shall I go?
Yes.
Shall I join?
Sorry. Yes, please.
Hi.
Thank you.
So who is here? Still 6 Can you put me in the first one?
Yeah, I will add it to the first one, Barbara. Nicola, do you want to go to anyone? Nicola isn't. That was more complicated than expected. Oh, again, my video wasn't on.
what did we decide about timing?
I missed it, to be quite honest. Do you know what we said? Half an hour, was it?
Well, I think she mentioned that at the top it was something like she wanted like 2 15-minute sessions, right?
Okay, then it's less.
So can you bring me into?
Yeah, but at what time do we close it?
In a few minutes.
Okay, I will move you to social 2.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was looking for the picture to show to Barbara about about how far we've already come, and it's within a really nice book, which is The Boy, the Mole, and the Fox, it's got population of. It's a nice story, right? Barbara wants to go to virology.
So I'm in the last one. Yeah, thank you.
And there was one of the pages is I discovered something better than cake. And the other one says, no, you haven't. Yes, I have. And what is it? It's a hug. It lasts longer. So it's a hug.
Ah, okay.
It's a really nice book. Let me see when I'm reading it on my Kobo at the moment. We'll make a picture. There it is. I'm going it to. Can I post it as a picture?
Okay, let's give them 2 or 3 other minutes. At half, we should meet again here. And I think they should just report back.
Yeah, Barbara, you just said, I think some time ago, already a few minutes, so I warned them. I just, before you spoke out, I just called them back. Do you want me, I don't know how, but cancel that
Okay.
or?
Yeah, they then just come, let's.
You have 1.5 minutes now left.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Mhm.
Is that okay? Okay, sorry.
I just sent you a picture, Barbara, from a really nice book.
Ah,
I have to download it, and then I can see it. Download.
The puppy is calling.
yes. Yes, he is.
Because we have such a long way to go.
Like metadata, which is
Yeah.
also
Oh,
calling.
that's perfect. That's who did this?
This is from a book, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and I also forget the last bit. I haven't read it yet, but I bought it yesterday, and it's. I will send you the link. It's a really nice
That's
book.
so nice.
Yes.
It fits perfectly.
Yeah.
So
You can
Eric,
show it if you want, Eric.
So Eric, the issue is now really that we need to identify people that are happy to continue some of this work.
Wait, say that again, Barbara. Say that again.
We need somebody. We need to define a process how to go further, and so not only up to me. You know, it depends really on the organization, the whole thing.
Indeed. So I have and I think I have a slide here that at least can introduce us to that subject. But I don't know, Barbara, if you have, a place cut out yet in what you want to say, where you bring this issue up.
Yeah. So first of all, when now everybody is back again, I would like to have a feedback on how the experience was finding these definitions, if they were happy or not.
Yeah.
And because, yeah, first is not long explanations, just if you could agree or not on those that you found. So if you could first say which table you looked at, which tab you looked at, and which terms you could agree and which you could not. The first group was, which is the first group, and who wants to speak?
There was Jenny and Kachana.
Yeah.
We looked at biomaterial, tab 1, substance, and we only looked at the green definitions. We could find 3 of them, and the last definition we couldn't verify because we didn't find the same definition as was used in the sheet.
Yeah, so you could agree on
3 of them.
On 3 of them.
Yeah, and but we also see that there was, for example, the one is peripheral blood mononuclear cell, and it's got a capital P and a little p. So I didn't know whether we had to remove the p or if that was an argument that that they were using in the group. And then there's a note at the end that says it should probably not be included under substance. There's also a SNOMED definition. Well, there's a SNOMED CT available, but no definition provided. We did find what they put in as a definition. So we verified the definition, but not the other questions.
Okay, okay. Okay, thank you. Next group. The second. Who is that? Renate, Danny, Sarah?
Yeah, so we looked at the surveillance phase. I think we discussed like 3 of the 4 definitions, and we could only agree on 1. Yeah, so we proposed some alternatives.
Yeah, but isn't it interesting? I think the third group also looked at the same. Is that correct? Who is the third group?
Yes, that's us. Sorry, we also looked at the where, when, and who?
Yeah, the surveillance. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So we looked at the same.
So can you, that's now interesting to see if the three, did you look at the same terms and could you both agree on the same or not? Can you find out?
Well, we looked at long COVID, and that was the one that we verified. So we agreed with that term. I don't know for group 2.
Yeah.
And then we looked at therapy. Yeah, we looked at therapy and we didn't agree. And we were looking into palliative. And there we also were not ready yet, or we did not agree yet totally on. Yeah.
No, and the other group said that they wanted a different term. Well, we actually did not necessarily have an issue with the definition, but we were just wondering if palliative was quite a generic term. You would expect palliative care or perhaps palliative treatment, some addition in some way. But we didn't mind the definition.
No,
and then the other team did have an issue with the time specification, which we didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I will comment on that later on. So we have still a last group.
Yeah, it was who is with me? Clara and I. And so we were looking at the population groups. And so we had option of elderly, which was pretty straightforward. And then they highlighted homeless, which it was purely semantics. The definition that was chosen was like the concept of being homeless, as opposed to like, it just kind of sat a bit wrong because it's supposed to be like homeless people. So I'm not 100% sure on that one, but people know what it's supposed to mean, so I'm not sure. Like
it's
it could define.
Not the best definition.
Yeah. But there might be a better definition, a way of more accurately describing people who are homeless.
Okay, so to sum up here, what I could hear is that you had on the one hand difficulties to agree on the same structural positioning of the term, but also you had sometimes difficulties to agree on the definition level. So although we went now through, I think, a few times working on the same term, it is still not easy to agree on an approach, which means that the best way to achieve at the end a vocabulary that is accepted by the community. Yeah, I could ask you what is the best way. I could also tell you what is my experience. If somebody wants to suggest now something, it's fine. I'm happy to hear it. Otherwise, I come up with a possible solution for this. How to achieve best a good status, a good basis for the vocabulary. Has anybody a good idea for that?
What could be just to stimulate the discussion, because we need your input, of course, and because we have thinking about it. But what do you need yourself? So if you look at this, the process of this afternoon, the discussions you had, are they useful, fruitful? And you don't need them, you don't have time. Those kind of things are determining how we are going to set up groups, right? So what's your feeling? If you would, if we take this as trainer principle, and you would be the next in kind to, let's say, help people out in your environment, your close or your next colleague. How would you set up this process, or what do you need to get to, let's say, a decision? Should you have an authority, like you hire Barbara and she will run around with a stick, and if you don't come to a conclusion, she will do? Or
is it a democratic process? Yeah, Danny, please.
for me, it's metadata, vocabularies, ontologies, and the implementation of interoperable metadata, ontology, vocabularies. It's very vague. Don't have much knowledge or experience on that. And part of the discussions that happen in these workshops, the two that I was able to follow, they kind of go over my head. I think it costs quite a bit of time to set up a good template that can be implemented into a certain discipline or a certain project type, which I'm not sure I have enough time for, or I'm sure I don't have enough time for it. I'm wondering, because I've heard comments today that some people are working for 12 years in metadata and still find it a difficult subject or a time-consuming subject. What does ZonMw have for an intention or an idea on including all data stewards and not specifically specialists on the topics of COVID research for implementing the this work?
Okay, you are asking ZonMw.
Well, I think we jumped into a very large adventure with the COVID crisis as an important trigger, but also before we also expressed the needs that to be able to work with reusable data, with fair data, metadata are an important part of that. And it is very new, and it is not the case that ZonMw will now be very strict on you have to work on developing new metadata schemes, but we do want to facilitate that research communities develop this. And we also want to facilitate capacity building among data stewards to be able to at least apply existing metadata, and in the ideal situation also contribute to new metadata for new research fields. But of course, we realize that it is difficult, but I think we now have a very unique situation with very good experts who work together to make this whole movement possible. And I'm very happy about that, and very I'm very optimistic that this will eventually lead to new ways to create reusable data.
Okay, may I jump in? I think what I could learn with this group, because it depends always on the group and the people involved also, and the skills that are present. Yeah, I think there could be a good possibility to distribute work, because there is some of the work that needs really experts, domain experts, to define something. So that's not necessary that this is done by a semantic expert or a data steward as such. So you need really expert, as domain experts, for the definition of terms, for the organization of terms, and how the semantic granularity should be. This is something that semantic experts should lead. And I think data stewards, some of them might be interested in this work, others not, because it's, I like it, I really like it, but I understand completely that's not everybody's preferred job, because it's somehow tedious, but you get better and better when you work with it. Yeah, so it might be good to have some of the data stewards trained to work with this, to steer the process, and to distribute the work, because as I said, some of this information can be prepared by experts. But what is also important is that the community accepts this vocabulary at the end. And for having the community accepting this approach, you need to organize some meetings, not long meetings, where you focus on one or two lists and say, this is what we could achieve so far. Can you agree on it? And then you have a voting process. And we had really this voting, we have this democratic way to decide, okay, we are happy with it or we are not happy with it. Because otherwise this is a vocabulary that won't be used and won't be recognized by the community. So 3 things. You have to train people that are really interested to step into this research, into this work, that like to look into the semantics, to find out how data can be organized, or this data descriptions vocabulary can be organized, then work really in small groups, so 2 or 3 people maximum, and then identify where you need experts to provide definitions. This is what I can say. But there were some comments, probably these are important.
Yes, I think Elise, she said that it also costs researchers a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for example, because they are less experienced, and for us as data stewards, it's a very good exercise. So for us, it's very useful, and it's very educational, and it's actually quite fun to experience how this is, how this comes about, even though it may be a bit more difficult to get used to in the beginning. But for researchers, this is a lot of effort, and it's very nice to have their input that is research related. Only, for example, some projects are quite small, so their data management budget is very limited, and they already exceeded their budget by the hours needed for the person that is involved in these data management workshops and the related data management plan that they have to write and so on, because it's quite new to them and they are learning all these things. So they were a bit confused, like it's costing so much time, and we're not sure how to make sure we still have budget left for the research itself. And I can imagine that with larger projects that could be less of an issue, but I think that, well, for data stewards it might be nice to be involved, that for researchers it could be nice and interesting, but also more enjoyable if they are compensated for the hours they spend in it, because budget-wise they didn't include enough hours to follow the workshops and in the end use all the metadata for their research.
Well, I'm not sure if this is a discussion we should have here, because then we get in a discussion about how much budget did you reserve and how many hours did you spend, and
they didn't show me numbers. They just said that they had this one person that they put on all the data management tasks within their team, because she knows knows the teams and she has contact with me. And in the end, she's I'm just worried about the cost benefit for the researchers, for all research in general. Also, if this is a future exercise, then for data stewards, it's very interesting. And for researchers, it may be a bit too time consuming.
And Elisa, may I ask, are those researchers the domain experts? Because I would like to separate the domain experts you need. Otherwise, you cannot do this task at all, because you need their expertise. Or are those the same persons in this case?
I'm not sure what you mean by domain expert.
A domain expert is, for example, a principal investigator of a study. Might be the domain expert. So if he's working in virology, he or she or the person might be a domain expert in virology. And you need them to explain, as Barbara pointed out, whether the definition is, for example, the right one. Because the data steward is just one facilitating the process and providing
Yeah, no, so it's a researcher on the study, but not the PI themselves.
Okay,
The
okay.
PIs themselves are a bit too busy, but there are co-investigators.
Yeah, can I add to that? Because indeed, ZonMw gave a kind of gave kind of a direction to what kind of budget you should reserve for data management. But it's also for data management, keeping the data the plan itself up to date, for instance. So that's already also costing time. So there is indeed time budgeted. And I think ZonMw was clear on that, but indeed, I'm a researcher myself, not a data expert working at a small program, then I'm not really sure if it's where I can find the time to also invest in building this metadata template.
May I just say something to that? So I think the work researchers do is really very valuable, but the problem was always that once the project was over, all the knowledge was also gone. So it is so important to make this sustainable, and you can only make it sustainable if it is well documented. And this have to come into our mind. We have to make this fair, and fair means that it costs time also to provide this information. So, and I think it should be a share between the researcher and the data steward. The data steward should guide this, but I think the awareness for this researcher should also grow and help to maintain this knowledge.
Yeah, I fully agree on that, and I see that it's worthwhile to invest in it. But at the same time, for researchers, perhaps, so there were some workshops for researchers, but not the workshops on the data management plan itself, etc. It was all focused on building this metadata template, which is a very useful experience to go through. But next to that, there's more to be done on exactly the same topic of making it fair itself. We will have to fill out the metadata template, etc., and then to store everything in according to all the guidelines that you're giving. So this is not the real work. This is also the real work, but there is even more work to be done to make it.
I know.
Ensure that it's fair.
I know. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, actually, you're participating in a development of a part of data management that you have to do anyway, and metadata is always a big struggle as long as we have been stimulating data management in our projects now for a couple of years. People say, oh, we need some help with metadata, please organize something. And that's what we're doing now. And yeah, you are one of the front runners in this. And eventually it needs to be applied in the projects. If it's really a tremendous problem, please contact me, but I think we should keep individual problems of projects outside this workshop.
Yeah, I would also like to come to conclusions now, because what we could find out now is, going back to our sheets, is which of the terms are for sure be verified now. So, or verified are just a few, the last, for those that we checked against by other groups. But I think so those that have already definitions and are accepted by the group, that should be clear by end of this workshop. So it would be really nice that those who have worked on the sheets could just tick the boxes for those, so finalized and agreed. So this must be very, very clear so that we have a basis to continue in which direction ever it will go. And the second is, yeah, what are you doing now with this information? Who is going to take this up and finalize this work? This is something that has to be discussed and decided at some point. And whatever I can help if necessary, but my training was for these 2 workshops at the moment. But you have already reached quite a a nice level, but it is not the end, I think.
I guess it's let's say too short time because in 8 minutes another session starts, so to say, that we probably won't come up with the let's say the ideal or agreed process to take forward. And maybe that also, and then I'm looking at Margreet, we should discuss with the team on Friday so that we come up with either proposed next steps, because I do see, maybe that's a take-home message, because I'm also involved in the Dutch COVID collection between all hospitals, is what the deans of the university medical centers now realize is that this is of course the first step, and as Margreet pointed out, this will grow, and whatever has been reached here can be reused, and it can be used as a kind of stepping stone, and that's why we need a lot of time and effort to get there. And once it's in place, it might go quicker. So the next steps, you are building a set which gets larger and can be reused.
So, and maybe, just to mention, we called this the metadata for machine workshop, because what we realized at Go Fair was that a lot of these steps that are needed to get metadata into a fair format, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, a lot of simple things we can do to begin to automate or to formulate the process for this. And what you've seen in the workshops in November and then last week and this week is, some of the world's experts at this kind of activity having an opportunity to really try to start formulating these things. This is the bleeding edge of metadata formulation, creation. And the idea of what we want to do is to find a way to make this process much more scalable. If we can't do that, if somehow this is inherently never going to scale, then we may as well give up on computers, because we keep losing our data as fast as we make it. And pretty soon the funding agencies aren't going to fund us anymore because the data go missing too quickly. So we have to find solutions. And we have Nicola here, who's an engineer at heart, and I think he sees tremendous scope for scalability here. We have Barbara, who's very committed to the really hard intellectual problems that have to be solved in creating vocabularies. And I think she's doing a great job figuring out how to make that even a little bit more formulaic. So you're in the middle of a process. It's always, the creative process is always a little bit chaotic, but we think we are close to showing that a lot of this very difficult labor can be expedited. And then, especially when we can get these things into fair format, they should be reusable in a pretty enormously scalable way. So it's difficult, it's long, people have been working at it for a long time, but I think we're close to finding solutions that could lead to a lot of scalability.
Yeah, so there should also be some conclusion from these two workshops from our side. So what we can tell to the data stewards, so that we don't leave this as it is now. We have to really identify.
Just to mention, Barbara, I don't know if you can see the share screen, but I did try to formulate, an outline to the next steps. Jeroen mentioned we'll have a meeting on Friday. We have regular meetings, but we will try to take what we've learned from these workshops and begin to figure out what the next steps are going to be. You mentioned already, Barbara, maybe the idea of setting up a kind of process where we can do the ongoing maintenance of the vocabulary and maybe the templates. And I know from Margreet's point of view, it's, what does a longer term process look like for replicating all of this in the context of new programs that are
Yeah, but the work done on the terms should also not be lost. So we should communicate also to those who are not yet anymore here that we would like to have this, ticked boxes for the terms done so far, so that we are clear that these are accepted. in this small group, and we continue then with that what is there, so
Yeah.
that this work is not lost. Yeah,
We'll do that. This was my way to conclude. And it's to say, you know, having a workshop like this is really a pleasure. It's really, you know, this unique moment, I think, driven by COVID and the pandemic and the urgency of it all, that we have this opportunity to really develop this way of doing metadata. So it's great. And, you know, I mean, who could deny wanting to cuddle with this cute little dog? But it's really also, we have to realize it's a kind of a new way of life, because we're creating a vocabulary that's a living piece of language, right? Human language, and it will need to grow, and it will need to be maintained, and it needs love just like a puppy. And then we begin to realize, hey, yeah, this cute dog is really nice right now for a day or a week, but oh my God, you know, we got to take care of this for the next 10 years. And all the responsibilities that go with it. So, and I say this just because I have a new puppy in my own life. So, but for me, this is the idea that or the conclusion would be that metadata is really this new way of life. It's a new way of looking at how we do research. And by the way, there's responsibilities then to the funder, or let's say to the bigger systems. Yeah, how are we going to figure out the sustainability behind all this? Can we create new mandates for people who are working in this area and give them the time and the latitude to train up and to learn these things and be dedicated experts at these things?
Yeah, I also think that probably semantics is also not for everybody, you know. To do this work is hard work somehow. It's interesting, but not everybody will love it. Yeah, not everybody loves this puppy. There will be some experts really liking it, but you have to get a feeling for it if this is yours. Yeah. And then there are others that have to do it, and you have just to facilitate them to make it more pleasant for them, yeah, to work with it.
And if I may, just to jump in, like it is hard work as a first step, but ideally what it leads to is like, once you define terms or templates, I mean, yes, but where this all leads to, like from my perspective, as somebody who hates to do things manually very much, is to integrate this into existing tools, both software and data acquisition system. So at the moment of point of data creation, your template is more or less fully populated and requires minimal or no interaction with it to get it out and being embedded. So it's all about embedding at the end all these things into tools, into instruments, and so on and so forth, because that's when it starts to get a true value and scalability in that sense, where you avoid doing manual things. Because anyhow, even now, when you go and publish things on Zenodo, you have to you know, to write your stuff manually and fill in. But if things are almost fully populated, it remove that burden from your own back on doing this.
Yep. Any final comments?
Yeah, I was typing in the chat that I will drop, but at least before I drop, I would like to say a big thank you to all those that participated and reached the results we have so far.
Absolutely.
I will always look at the glass, and my glass is always half full instead of half empty. Let's also take the last whatever mile it is to finish up what we reached, because otherwise it would be a pity. Because there is a lot of value in those, let's call it currently Google Sheets, which I would like to finish. So I'm available.
We should see reuse on this vocabulary,
exactly,
like almost immediately. There's a lot of other organizations ready to take what you've done and repurpose it. Yeah, I'm so impressed by the enthusiasm. I mean, look at it. It's here we are after 5 o'clock, and there's still 18 people on the line. So I really thank you very much for being the champions and for coming back and committing to this very technical, difficult work. It's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.